You starting already? I was starting. Oh my goodness, I am so not shy. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our township meeting on April the 21st. So we are going to get started with a pledge of allegiance. Please join us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much. Next, Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
I will, thank you. Trustee Bellin,
Here.
trustee Cascarella,
Present.
trustee Lyman,
Here.
trustee Mojica.
Here.
Treasurer Feedable,
Here.
clerk Clark is present, supervisor Brewer,
Present.
you have the quorum.
Thank you so much, Clerk Clark. Now, the first thing on our agenda tonight is something really exciting. We have a presentation that I am honored to have the board join me with this, but we're going to do a presentation. I think it's up here for me. And I'm going to ask Kathy to join me up front, if you will. That's okay. That's okay. So tonight we are so honored to celebrate the 90th birthday of one of our residents who is also a professor at MSU and could not be here tonight because he's teaching. So, but we wanted to honor him, and this is his daughter Kathy, but it is Mr. Gillespie. Gillespie, Mr. Gillespie. So here we go. Whereas born in 1935 in Akron, Ohio, Randall Uncle G. Gillespie, I'm just going to strangle myself, Gillespie, a nationally celebrated jazz musician and Delta Township resident, will celebrate his 90th birthday this May. And whereas Uncle G began his love affair with music from a very young age, learning to play drums and honing his talents by his early teens. He began performing in nightclubs despite his young age. And although illegal for a young boy to play in the nightclubs, his talents and popularity prompted local law enforcement to look the other way during his performances. And whereas Mr. Gillespie, okay, was always mentioned and protected by the older musicians around him. Randy has met and has heard almost every major jazz musician, including Wes Montgomery, Sonny Stitt, Dina Washington, Etta James, Lou Donaldson, Gene Ammons, Joe Williams, Nancy Wilson, Dizzy Gillespie, Tommy Flanagan, Barry Harris, Oliver Jones, O.C. Smith, L. Hibbler, and most recently with Jerry Allen. And whereas Uncle G talents stretch beyond jazz, he also worked and played for several blues musicians, including Jimmy Withers, John Lee Hooker, Big Maybell, Donald Weldon, Marcus Belgrave, Perry Hughes, Rodney Whitaker, Gary Schmuck, Rick Rowe, Marion Hayden, Bill Hyde, Andrew Spite, and Wycliffe Gordon. And whereas Mr. Gillespie, I'm getting there, is currently a professor at Michigan State University College of Music, where he teaches jazz drums. He came to Michigan State University before the formation of the jazz program in 1991 to work with a combined arts and music department and was instrumental in the development of the program. And whereas Uncle G has taught thousands of Michigan State University music students and aspiring jazz musicians how to play music proficiently and share the importance of the jazz culture. Now therefore be it resolved that on the 21st day of April, 21, 25, Delta Township Board does hereby recognize and thank Uncle G for all that he has done to keep jazz alive and thriving. And be it further resolved that we wish Uncle G a very happy 90th as you continue to move full speed ahead, sharing your musical talents and gifts. I so move this resolution.
Support.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, thank you. And I'd love for Kathy, if you'd like to say a few words, you're welcome to.
I don't need to.
Okay, she's good. So
I
thank,
tried to get him to come, but his students out there, they absolutely love him. And he was like, no, because one of them missed. I'm like, okay. So, yeah, so thank you all so much for this. He's gonna be so excited.
thank you. So much, and my apologies.
That's okay. Thank you so much.
Next on our agenda is something that we always look forward to. Is our annual audit report. So I'm going to turn the mic over to Courtney.
So tonight, we have Jeff Staley, being our custodian and our auditor to give our annual audit report.
Thank you.
Well, it's a pleasure being here tonight. I know this is probably not nearly as exciting as celebrating a 90th birthday on it, but I will try to make this as exciting as possible. We did meet earlier last week to go a deep dive into the financial statements. Mr. Fida was there, Mary was there, as well as Brian and Courtney. So we did a deep dive on that. We spent over an hour going through the financial statements. So I promise this will not be an hour. We're going to do this more a little bit of a high level, but if you have any questions as we go through, please don't hesitate to ask. So the first slide is just kind of who we are as Mater Costerison and our expertise in governmental accounting for that. So we do over 300 governmental clients, over 150 single audits per year, as well as we have over 50, that's actually up to 60 now, individuals dedicated specifically for municipality work. So as always, when we start these presentations, we kind of like to go through what is the common theme for 2024. And to kind of say 2024 was a busy year for the township is probably a drastic understatement. You had a lot going on. And when we look at it and some of the key projects that were taking place, we had the continuation of the water resource recovery facilities, which is a very large project. Continuation of the substation and parks storage building was continued to go on. The continuation of the LG Solutions of Michigan project, or the Ultrium project taking place. One great thing for 2024 is we had positive return of our investments. Probably not looking so great for 2025, but at least 24 was pretty good for the township. Oh, and by the way, we had to implement 2 new accounting standards, as well as we still had a single audit. So we still had the federal compliance issues to deal with for the township. So we had a very busy year for 2024. So, but what were your audit results? For the financial statements, we issued an unmodified opinion that is the highest level of assurance that we can provide as auditors. It's commonly referred to as a clean audit report. And like I mentioned, we did implement 2 new accounting standards, GASB 100 as well as GASB 101 during the year, as well as the single audit. The single audit, we did issue an unmodified opinion on the federal award that we did issue, that we did audit this year. So, and an unmodified opinion is basically a clean audit report for the federal award program. Within your financial statements, there's the management discussion and analysis. Highly recommend everybody take a few minutes to read it. It's a very good overview of the financial information for the township. It kind of really puts it a little bit more in layman's terms of the financial activity, as well as it's nice and summarized for it. So, but within the MD&A, we are showing a positive net position on the full accrual basis for both the governmental activities as well as the business type activities. And we did have a solid financial performance, a lot of it because of the return on the investments. So Within your audit package too, there is a governance letter. That is our required communication to the board. Within there, we do disclose that the township does rely on their financial statements to have some significant estimates, think pension, OPEB, how long the asset is going to be around. Those are significant estimates. Those are disclosed in your governance letter, as well as the adoption of the new accounting standards. With all the activity that we had for this year, I am happy to report we don't have a management letter. We don't have any suggestions on improvements on the internal control process. And if you ask Courtney, she probably said they pulled a lot and we looked at a lot. But I'm happy to report that people are dotting their I's, crossing their T's, a proper approval process, very strong internal control process in regards to the financial activities. So.
I always look for the manager letter and I was so thrilled when there wasn't one. Thank you.
And with all the activity taking place, there was a great opportunity to trip. But happy to report no tripping throughout the year with all the activity that took place. So like I mentioned, it's new for 2024 with all the construction activities. We did have a single audit this year. We did spend over $5.7 million of federal awards, and it's pretty much broken down into two projects. But a little over $3 million was for the Clean Water Site Revolving Fund for the wastewater treatment plant, as well as $2.6 million was spent related to the coronavirus state and local recovery funds. So one thing is nice to report too, because we've had clean single audit reports in the past. This year we do qualify as a low risk auditee status. And then, like we mentioned earlier, investment returns were solid this year. Here we do have a nice summarization of your governmental as well as your business type activities for the statement of net position. This is on the full accrual basis, so it does include all your fixed assets as well as your long-term obligations. It is broken into two categories: the governmentals, which would be your general fund, capital projects, special revenue funds, and then the business type activities, which would be your water and sewer. For 2024, at the end of the year, total assets township wide is about $320 million. Total liability is about $114 million, leaving a net position of about $184 million. One thing I do want to keep in mind for the statement of net position, a big portion of that, roughly $127 million, is tied up into our fixed assets. So it's non-spendable money. As well as we have about $8.7 million of restricted. We just can't go out and spend it. It's restricted for a particular use on that.
And how much do you expect that to increase when our wastewater recovery resource plant is completed and increasing our net assets?
That's going to still go up quite a bit because they're still in the process of adding to the construction for the wastewater treatment plant. I don't know the exact number that we have in work in process at the end of 24, but I can get that number for you.
We'll see it next year.
Yeah, we'll see it next year, hopefully, if it gets completed. So on that, but it's a large project. You're looking at an $80 million plus project on that. So that investment in capital assets will continue to grow. The next page we have here is the changes in the net position or the income statement, again, broken down in the two categories of governmental activities and business type activities. Governmental activities for the end of 2024, we were able to add about $6.4 million to net position. And for the business type activities, we were able to add $20.4 million to net position. That number is a little bit misleading. And the reason for it is we received over $19 million of state grants and contributions for capital assets. So we picked up the revenue, but the expense actually went to a fixed asset. So it arbitrarily inflates the bottom line for this year. So of that 20 million, pretty much want to back off 19 million of it because that's one-time grant money that we may or may not get moving forward. So for true operational purposes, but township wide, the increase in that position was about 26 million. The next page we have right here is a summarization of our balance sheet. This is on the modified accrual basis of accounting. It's a nice summarization of your major funds: general fund, paramedic fund, capital projects, or non-major. Our non-majors are debt service and our cemetery fund, and then the enterprise funds, which is the water and sewer. At the end of the year, the general fund had about $26.1 million. We do have a note here of that $26.2 million. $10.3 million of it is non-spendable. It's either tied up in the prepaids or assigned for particular projects moving forward, as well as the board does have an internal policy of maintaining a 50% minimum fund balance, which it does calculate to be about 10.3 million. So of the 26.2 million, about 20.6 million of it's either assigned for a particular purpose or set aside because to meet the minimum fund balance requirements for the township. So for the paramedic fund and the business and the capital projects and the non-major funds, those fund balances are restricted for a particular use, whether it be for the substation construction or the paramedic funds for paramedic services. So that fund balance is restricted. Of the enterprise funds, 123.6 million that we have there for fund balance, $96.3 million is the fixed asset portion. So it's non-spendable portion of it. So the next page, we do have the statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in fund balance by all the funds. Township wide, we were able to add about 16.2 million to fund balance. A big portion of that comes from the enterprise, like we talked about, was because of the capital contributions from the state grants. The general fund had a solid financial performance, was able to add about 4.2 million to fund balance for that. The capital projects, we are spending down our bond proceeds that we issued last year. That's why it shows we're using up about 8.6 million of that fund balance. Our next slide is a budget comparison for the general fund. The final budget for the general fund was to use up 653,000. Like I mentioned earlier, we were able to add to our fund balance by about 4.2 million. Now, if we look at our budget variance for the revenue side of it, we budgeted 24.6 million for the final budget for revenue. That came in at 25.2. So you had a 2.18% variance on the budget. Very good job on the budgeting side of it. We have a little bit bigger variance gap on the expenses, but we do have some notes in there to explain why there was the budget variance. Built into our budget were positions at the manager's office as well as the engineering office that weren't filled during the year. So it created a positive variance there, as well as the chill grant expenses were budgeted but not spent, as well as delayed in the capital projects for the fire, cemetery, and parks departments. They were budgeted, they were planned. Unfortunately, just weren't able to get to them. We do have a 5-year trend of your fund balance for throughout the year. We kind of talk about your fund balance policy and the progression of that. The next slide is our KPI, or key performance indicator, relating to pension. One thing to quickly remind you, our pension is reported as of 12/31/2023. So it's a year behind on the pension reporting. So we can get your financial statements out on a timely basis. For the township, pension is funded at 68.7%. That is based on current market value of the assets. MERS determines that is funded at 73% because MERS uses a 5-year smoothing average of the investment. So they value the assets a little bit higher versus the market value, which we report on that. The average funding for pension across the state of Michigan for townships is right around the 73.5%. We do have the same slide for OPEB, or other post-employment benefits. The township has done a very good job of funding the OPEB obligations. Currently at the end of 2024, because we measured it as of 2024 for the OPEB, the township's about 132% overfunded on that. So they did a very good job of funding the OPEB side of it. Across the state of Michigan, OPEB is funded roughly about 72.7%. So slightly better than the state average for the OPEB obligations. We do have a nice pie table here of the revenues for the general fund. As you probably all can imagine, the number one source of revenue for the township is property taxes, which is then followed by the state sources. And then we show a 5-year trend of the revenue, which you can see the consistency, property taxes and state sources are the number 1 and 2 funding sources for the township for the year. Next slide is a nice pie chart of the expenses for revenue. The number 1 expense for the township is actually public safety. That represents about 42% of all the expenses within the general fund. Then the same 5-year expense chart for the expenses in public safety takes the lion's share of the expenses in any given year. So within your financial statements, there are notes and quite a few notes, to be honest with you. So we tried to summarize some of the significant notes. Note number 1 does describe all of our significant accounting policies. So if you get bored tonight and can't sleep, read that. But it does explain all of our accounting policies and how we account for our financial transactions within note number 1, as well as disclose our millage for the general millage, as well as the public safety millage that the township is authorized to levy. Note number 3 is our capital assets. For the general activities, we added 13.7 million to new fixed assets or work in process, which is primarily the substation and the storage building. And we took about 2.3 million of depreciation. For the enterprise funds or the business type activities, we added 43.8 million. That's primarily the wastewater treatment plant for the construction and process. And then we took about 2.8 million in depreciation. Appreciation number will go up for the enterprise funds once we put the wastewater treatment plant into service and start taking depreciation on it. Note number 5 is our long-term debt outstanding for that. Notes 6 and 7 is the detailed information for pension and OPEB. And then notes 13 and 14 describes the new accounting standards that we implemented this year, as well as the impact on the township. And last but not least is the single audit. Within the single audit package, we do have a report on internal control over financial reporting. If we noted any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses in your internal control process on the report on financial reporting, it would show up in that letter. Happy to report no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies noted. So that letter is a very standard boilerplate letter, and from a board's perspective, exactly what you really want to see, as well as there's a federal award report. Like we mentioned, we issued a modified opinion. The federal program that we audited this year was the coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds. And like I said, clean audit report on that and no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies relating to the federal award program. So the team did a very good job, especially with all the activity that took place this year.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Are there any questions? Treasurer Fedor.
Well, just a comment, as I mentioned before, Jeffrey, is you keep coming back with these stellar audits year after year after year, especially after this last year and the burdens that we had. We're going to have to give Courtney and her staff medals. So, but it's just a testament to basically the attention to detail and the professionalism that's exercised by basically everybody in the township. But this brings it to light, on an annual basis, even though I think as board members, we don't necessarily see it on a daily basis, but this certainly brings it to our attention and the public's attention on an annual basis. And it's very, very appreciated. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Well, Jeffrey, thank you. You've said a few things that we always love to hear: clean audit report, unmodified opinion, and no management letter. So thank you, and we'll see you next year. And as Treasurer Fedor said, thank you to Courtney and her team.
All righty. Well, thank you.
Thanks. Next, we have on the agenda, we have 4 items under communications that is in the packet, and the board members will read them at their leisure. They probably read them, but there is one that I want to comment on.
Yes, that's the agenda.
Oh, well, good. Okay, I forgot about that. I skipped right through that. See, I'm trying to get us out of here at a decent hour. Okay, let's talk about this agenda. Is there a motion to accept the agenda as presented or any amendment?
So support, yeah.
You moved.
I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Thank you. Is there support? We have a motion and support. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
That motion passes. Thank you for that. Now we can talk about communications. They're in your packet. There is one that I want to recognize, and it is a thank you letter to Laura Miller, who served on the CIA board from its inception. And we just appreciate and thank her for her service. And the other matters are listed here on the agenda for everyone to peruse. We are now under public comment. We invite you all to come up and share your thoughts, concerns, or whatever you'd like to say with us. You have 3 minutes to do so, and Clerk Clark is going to be the timekeeper. Please note that we will not comment back to you. There may be a comment later on in the meeting, but we will not comment back and forth with you during your public comment. Thank you. Please state your name.
Yeah, good evening, trustees. My name is Scott House. I'm a resident at 4712 Whitetail Lane. I'm here tonight to discuss the short-term rental ordinance. I want to thank you for your efforts on bringing that forward. That's been a significant level of investment for my friends and colleagues that have been negatively impacted by short-term rentals on private roads specifically. I want to reiterate some of the challenges a private road presents for short-term rental. A private road is private property, not meant for fire trucks. It doesn't have street lighting. It's not meant for commercial purposes. We know there's a place for Airbnb and other things such as that, but a private road that does not have routine access, that's not plowed, that doesn't have the safety standards that a public road that has public access. They're two different things. We appreciate your consideration and thoughtfulness in navigating and developing a policy that took that into consideration. I want you to imagine living on a dark street at 2 o'clock in the morning, someone gets dropped off by an Uber that's inebriated and knocks on your door. What do? You know, that's a person thinking they try to get into your house. They're trying to find an Airbnb on a private road in a dark area and they don't know where they're at. Can you blame that person? They thought they were getting a bundle of services, but things happen. We've had challenges where people were partying excessively, disrupting the life and the enjoyment of life and property of people in their neighborhood. And we've seen the negative impacts. It's caused undue stress. It's caused hardship. I want you to go back to that same thing where that person shows up at your door at 2 o'clock inebriated and trying to get into your house because they think it's their Airbnb, even though it's the next door one. Or the same cast of characters are, openly inebriated during the day and your kids are out and about. And then when they drive down this private road, they throw beer cans, bottles, they're walking around using illicit substances, things that you should not allow or have to endure. When it's a public right of way, the police can respond and enforce the law. When you're on a private road, you're left to bear that burden on your own. So again, thank you for your thoughtfulness. I know it's not easy. Airbnb definitely has a place, but on private roads, it does not. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Scott. Our next public speaker.
Hi, my name is April Bryan and I live at 3343 Wardell Road. I just wanted to come back up and also express my concerns. It's been a long time since we've, like August of last year, since we first started coming and expressing all of the concerns that we had. Just last week, we had a neighbor who had an emergency situation and it took 5 of us to get the ambulances down to her house to help her out. She ended up injuring herself pretty badly. So that was an example of something that we constantly have to deal with. And also, I hope that everybody who is new on this board has taken the time to review all of the hours of video with us coming and explaining the issues that we've had. And I hope that they have seen the emails and the things that we've shared and use that as part of the decision that you make in voting for this. And also, I do still have a concern if we implement a new ordinance and policy, who is going to enforce it? With the decline in policing that we're hearing about, if that happens and the number of Airbnbs increase, then how are those going to be policed? Who are we going to call on the weekend when the music is really, really loud and the police tell us, well, it has to be over a certain number of decibels or we won't come out, or it has to be after midnight or we won't come out? I mean, are we going to call you? Are we going to call somebody from the township on Saturday? When that happens, like, what are we supposed to do? So we've lived these nightmares, everything that Scott House just shared. This has happened to us, and our fear is that it is allowed to continue. So thank you for hearing my concerns and I appreciate it.
Thank you, April. Any other public comment? Not seeing any movement, we are going to move into our introduction of ordinances. And our first one is short-term rental. And I believe, is Peter going to bring that one to us, talk to us about that?
So there have not been any changes since the last time this item was discussed. It's the draft ordinance is in the same that it was before, same content. The general process for this is if the language is suitable for the board, we publish it for introduction and bring it back for final adoption at the May 5th board meeting. I think I have a note in here. Supervisor Brewer and I did meet with Airbnb Inc. And they didn't share any particular concerns about the ordinance. It was more to check in, just to understand what it was that we were looking to do. So if you have any questions, please do let me know.
Are there any questions?
Not a question, just a comment. I had an opportunity to talk to the representative from Airbnb as well and, shared what we were looking at and the rationale behind that, with the proposed ordinance change. But thought it was helpful to hear from them as well, so. I'm happy to make the motion.
I have a question.
Oh,
There's one
Yeah.
more question and then we'll turn back to you. Go ahead.
Where
trustee
did we
Bowen.
land on the fee? The
The
rent,
fee will be the same that the long-term rentals will pay. So they pay, I have to go back to my memos here. $205 per building plus 20 per unit.
okay. I think that we should be prepared to consider in a year's time or so, see how this goes. And if we continue to see problems with Airbnbs, like our residents stated, that maybe we should look into, higher fees to make it a little bit more prohibitive and to make it a little bit more serious that we're taking this very, very seriously, that our residents come first. And, we're not going to be pushed around on things like this.
Josh?
Is the policing for private roads addressed in the ordinance?
Policing specifically?
Yeah, just like how she had said, they have a tough time getting down the street and everything like that.
No, this ordinance does not speak to that. I guess the policing would be the same whether it's private or public roads. This doesn't identify any other solution.
But the ordinance does include requiring a local contact, so when there are issues, because that's been a challenge in the past, correct, with some of the owners
It
of
has been,
the
yeah.
problematic properties. And that way there is someone local who can be responsive to the problems. as
Yeah,
well. Yeah.
sorry, I was speaking like specifically to the policing. I'm
Yes.
not sure but yes, this ordinance will help us understand who the best person on site would be to deal with any issues, whether it's a tenant issue or a property site issue.
And I am pleased to add, as Peter said, and trustee Cascarello, our conversation with Airbnb, they seemed very supportive to help us and to help other governments. They have a practice in place that we can reach out to them and let them know if we're running into an issue. And they have measures that they can take. And they're fairly timely. I think it's like within a 2-week window that they could take action with documentation or some sort of report from us. So I was pleased to hear that they've been thinking about this. They've been working with other municipalities to make sure that these ordinances have some leverage of help behind them. Any more questions before we move it?
Not a question, I just wanted to make a comment. I know there was this, the inquiry around the fees, but I think we need to be really thoughtful about that. Just because there may be 1 or 2 bad actors, I don't think anyone looking to serve as, have a short-term rental should be penalized by a high fee when they have been responsible landlords for short-term rental. So I just would caution that we not assume a broad increase, and I think we do an annual, we consider those fees, our different fees annually, and there's a time that would come up, but I think there are other ways to penalties and other ways to target those that are bad actors.
I did want to add one more thing though.
Yes, go ahead.
It's actually sort of two parts. So, in the subsection B for the rental standards, it states neighboring properties for the people on private roads. Are we going to look to define that? On how many neighboring properties and which properties would be considered neighboring?
To define neighboring, we could define it. I guess I was thinking just adjacent, like any property it might touch. Or any shared parcel lines.
Yeah, potentially. And then the other piece of that is, if we're allowing people on private roads to do that, why not on public? Which that doesn't need to be answered now. I just think it should be addressed later.
Josh, can you restate that? I want to make sure I'm clear on what
Yeah,
you're
so
asking.
by allowing people on private roads to sort of give the thumbs up on these, why would we not allow people in just a regular neighborhood to do the same? It's only private roads that are addressed, if I read the ordinance correctly.
So there's a specific provision in this draft ordinance or this proposed ordinance that would, it has a little bit different standard for properties on a private road. So it prohibits we're not talking ADUs yet. That's another day. Let's not go there yet. New short-term rentals on private roads specifically, and it provides for a mechanism to, if you can get approval from the other folks with the, associated with the private road, then you could have a short-term rental on that street. So I think, trustee Lyman is asking about like, how do we define that? Who do we contact for those kind of things, or who has to sign off? Am I reading?
This question, or are you also saying, why aren't we doing the same thing for?
Yeah, why not for everybody? I
Non-private
don't think it should be, I don't think it should just be singled out if that's how.
I'll be
we're
right
gonna
with
do it.
you. Be right with you. I just want to make sure he gets it. Does that make sense, Peter? Are you understanding?
I'm hearing it, yeah.
Okay, is there something that we should consider or do differently with the wording?
That's up to you. I'm comfortable with
You're
it, but
just
that's
sharing
up to you guys. Yeah. If you need some clarity, just let me know.
We're gonna go to trustee Coscarell and then I'll come to you, Clerk Clark.
Yeah, mine is just kind of in response to that question. And maybe I misunderstood, but I interpreted those provisions in part responding to the uniqueness, and some of that was provided in the public comment earlier in our meeting with a private road where you'd have those property owners share responsibility for maintaining it. It is a slightly different circumstance than being on a non-private road in the community. So I thought it was more in response to that, but maybe I misunderstood the intent of that provision.
Well, the intent of the provision is definitely specifically addressing that scenario. I mean, I was looking, and I appreciate that this point got brought up before the meeting, because I did look at some of the private roads. Most of our private roads are either multifamily developments like condos, or the other hotspot is along the river. So where there may, if we're going to see short-term rentals, that might be one of the most likely places. At least that's where the place off Wardell was, kind of a scenic place. It's one of our, we don't have, not that the community is not fantastic, but we have a lot of destinations probably that would lend themselves well for short-term rentals.
Clerk Clark?
I just want to point out, I think there is a difference between public and private roads. Public roads are paid for broadly with all of our tax dollars. Private roads are paid for by the people who live on those roads, and we have a number of them in the township. There's one out where, since I've been here, probably in the last 10 years, I think Dennis was here also, and Karen, when they did a whole issue of having their road remilled. And we entered into an agreement to put it on their tax bills for them, the assessment for the neighbors. And they paid for many years to have those roads redone. And so I think there is a difference between public and private, and I personally don't have an issue with restricting and putting a different parameter on private roads.
Trustee Bowman?
I would also guess that private roads probably have different requirements, different guidelines that they follow. If it's hard for an ambulance to get down a private road, then clearly they're not following the same kinds of standards that public roads do with curbs and width and grade and all this sort of thing. So I think it's probably a matter of a private road is not, it's not a right of way, it's not public property, it's private property. And if they want to privately say, we don't want to do this, then the ordinance respects that.
That's kind of my point though, because can't they do this themselves?
With
People on private
a
roads.
signage, no trespassing kind of thing. This is a private road.
Or just ban Airbnbs on their private road?
No, I don't think so.
Is that a possibility? Because some of the concerns they brought up, I just don't see those being remedied in that specific subsection. I think it's kind of remedied everywhere else.
I don't have all the answers for that. The way I understand that you would have to, I guess if I lived on a private road and to adjudicate that, you would have to enter into civil litigation with your neighbors
Mhm.
to make that. So that's I think the process that would follow. On the screen, just I don't want to derail the conversation. So hopefully this helps, not hurts. The green are public roads, the blue are private. So some of I know that this is small, but some of the roads I was talking about, were these off the river. The particular issue that we had most recently, well, if the mouse would work, was Wardell. So you see Wardell's public until it gets down to past the park, and then there's a blue spur there that shows that it's private, and then these other streets. This is just kind of my observation this afternoon along the Grand River. We don't have, I mean, we definitely have private roads, but most of them are not necessarily like residential neighborhoods.
Are subdivisions with HOAs considered private?
Not necessarily with they have an HOA. It could be most condo developments would. So, because HOAs could be in a platted subdivision or condo wherever. But most condos that I've seen in the last 20 years have private roads because they allow them to be narrower is the primary get for
Which
For
color is
condos.
private and which color is? public?
green is public, blue is
Blue is
private.
private. Okay. Supervisor. Brewer?
Just a second.
The
Treasurer
question I
Peter,
have-
and then I'll come over
The
here.
question I have is that what's before us is an introduction of the ordinance.
Correct.
Do we feel that we need to have a more discussion that we may be amending this language before we put it out? For introduction of an ordinance, which requires what, at least 2 weeks, I believe?
It just has to be noticed. I think it's 10 days before we bring it back for final.
Right, right. And I don't know how appropriate it is to sit there and put it out, and then if we want to make changes to it, that may be substantial or not in regards to private versus public roads or not. That's the question. But are we going to really resolve this right now and here? Or do we want to make the decision of putting this out? Or do we just hold it back to have a better discussion? So when we do put it out, everybody is in sort of a consensus agreement on it.
Let's keep that in mind real quick. I want to hear what the next comment is. and then
Well,
I'll go back.
for trustee Lyman, you might not know the background on this, that this first came to us because the residents on Wardell,
Mhm.
someone sold their house to someone who lived out of state and they turned it into an Airbnb. So they weren't there, but they were renting it out and people were having loud parties. They were jumping in the river, all this sort of thing. And it's a small space, it's a private road. And so we drew up these ordinances specifically because of that instance. And that's why we were so specific about private roads versus public roads, because they did not have any other recourse except to come to us and say, we live here, we are residents, we don't want to have to deal with this on a regular basis.
But I live on a private road that I live on up north. And we have policies that we have to follow regarding Airbnbs. So that's kind of my thing is I don't understand why we'd have to, it just seems like overreach on something that people on private roads can more than likely take care of themselves. Personally.
Do you have an association?
Yeah, up north I do.
I don't think they have an association here, though.
Yeah, it just takes an attorney to form one.
Treasurer or trustee Cascarella?
I just wanted to add, for trustee Lyman's benefit too, there was that incident. We did have another problem short-term rental property in the Marmore subdivision as well. Fortunately, that one also has been sold and is no longer a rental, but you know, that was part of the impetus for an ordinance.
Thank you.
I think at this point, I will open it up to you. I'm okay with the language as written because we remember the stories that led us to today. And I think it's very meaningful. It's not leaving anyone out. It may be identifying the private property, but there is no one that's left out of this ordinance that will not be monitored. We hope, we certainly hope so. We hope we have the staff to do that. But I personally am comfortable, Josh, because we discussed this at length when it came up. It was quite a concern to the residents that were on this street as well as Marmore. And so I'm pleased that we're in a better place for both of those areas. I don't see that this staying in the way it is harmful or isolating or making them seem more special than anybody else that's on a public. That's just for me. If I'm seeing this different collectively from the board, please let me know. If not, I'd like a motion, if there is one, to, as presented, that we are going to put this on the May 5th board meeting. Trustee Cascarella.
I move that the Delta Township Board introduce an amendment to Chapter 8 Buildings and Building Regulation of the Code of Ordinances by adding Article 7 Short-Term Rentals and direct the Township Clerk to publish the ordinance for introduction in a local newspaper prior to consideration of final adoption scheduled for May 5th, 2025 for the May 5th, 2025 Township Board meeting.
It has been moved. Is there support?
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, do we need a roll call, Clerk Clark, or we're good? All in favor?
Aye.
We pass that motion.
First.
Are there any oppositions? Hearing none, that motion is passed. Thank you. Thank you so much, Peter.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
And now, Marcus, you're up. We're going to talk about the park ordinance. You could walk us through that. We'd greatly appreciate it.
Good evening, board. I come tonight with a recommendation from the Parks, Recreation and Cemeteries Commission to basically review the parks ordinance as written. You have it in your packets, but some of the main concerns were, with this being a park ordinance, we start to get into roadways being mentioned as well as paths, as the definitions of our paths have changed, probably since this ordinance was written. So the recommendation was really just to remove roadways because it gives the impression that bicycles are not allowed on the roads between sunset and sunrise. And we know by state law that they are. Some of our pathways that may connect parks could be covered here, but yeah, you start to get into the St. Joe pathway, east-west pathway, the reference to roadways and paths there just not only became a little confusing, but certainly something that it would be hard to manage.
Are there any questions or would someone like to proceed with a motion? Clerk Clark.
I move that the Delta Township Board introduce amendments to Chapter 30 Parks and Recreation of the Delta Township Code of Ordinances. The Township Clerk is hereby directed to advertise this introduction in local newspapers with final consideration on the proposed ordinance amendment scheduled for May 5th, 2025 Township Board meeting.
Support.
It has been moved and supported. Is there any discussion? Not seeing any discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you, Marcus.
Sure, thank you.
Marcus.
So we have the two ordinances, which both will be placed, I think, on the May 5th meeting. So are any of our public, you will be able to come back and comment as it's presented during our May 5th or before. If you have any questions, please let us know. We are now on to the consent agenda. What is the desire of the board? Trustee
I move
Bowen,
to approve the consent agenda as presented.
is there support?
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any discussion? Roll call vote. Clerk.
Trustee Bowen,
Yes.
trustee Cascarilla,
Yes.
trustee Lyman,
Yes.
trustee Mohica,
Yes.
treasurer Fedelma.
Yes.
Clerk Clark is yes, supervisor Brewer,
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you. That motion carries. We are now on to, we do not have any old business. We're now on to new items of business. And the first item is Anderson Park MMMBA agreement. Marcus is going to come back up, I believe, for the next two. All yours.
Thank you, Supervisor Brewer. As stated in the board memo back in October, late October, the board approved extending the hours for Anderson Park, in which time the board asked us to review a number of items. And we have certainly reviewed those, and also stated in the document, we went from a bullet point memo agreement to a number page legal document, but certainly working with the manager's office and the deputy manager, we were able to review and get legal advice throughout the process, as well as have some back and forth with the triple MBA group. So tonight we come on behalf of the Parks, Recreation and Cemeteries Commission, recommending an agreement.
We have heard about the agreement and we've read it in our packet. Are there any questions? Clerk?
I do have a question, because we have different hours in the parks where we have summer ball leagues. If we're doing this, I mean, that's not really anywhere, it just happens? Because we talked about this before, whenever
There's-
Anderson came up.
The only thing stated in the agreement with them is the park hours. I don't know if you're getting ahead to the next one.
I don't know, I'm on.
Are you saying that it's
No.
not included or it needs to be included?
Well, I'm questioning why it isn't included. It just in general, I mean, this whole issue came up before, whenever Anderson first came up. And I made the point that we have ball teams that play in the parks after 7 PM or whatever the closing time was. I'm just saying, if we're,
But this agreement is specific to Anderson Park.
No, it's,
is it?
it's specific to
It's
the
specific to
triple
Anderson,
MBA.
my apologies.
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought, am I missing something? It's specific to Anderson Park.
Okay.
Thank you.
This
Trustee
is
Bowen.
specific to Anderson Park. I didn't understand that the rules were only specific to Anderson.
We're on the agreement.
My bad.
No problem. Trustee Bowen, and then I'll turn.
I have a couple of questions. It says that the triple MBA shall maintain commercial general liability insurance and the limits and that sort of thing. Is that, what does that cover? That doesn't cover individuals who just go out and use the bike trails and they just happen to be members, does it? Is
No,
it?
it just covers the triple MBA members doing agreed time that they're out there performing maintenance.
Okay, so it's for maintenance and do they have to have some kind of oversight agreement? What if a group of members go out to do maintenance and the leadership of the group doesn't know they're out there and someone's injured? You know, how is that gonna work?
Well, first of all of their work has to be approved
Okay.
by the township. If they're out there, then, I mean, they're outside of the agreement that we have, and
Okay, so they'll let us know, but then they have to know as well, their organization's leadership.
yes,
Okay,
yes.
so that insurance does not cover events that they hold out there. This is just for maintenance.
For the agreement, yes, it covers maintenance for their events. I'm sure they'd be covered as well.
Okay. I wasn't clear on that as all.
Because we did, you also work this with insurance carrier and I think all that's,
I mean, it's general liability insurance. So, I mean, that can cover a broad range of things
Cover an event,
of
yeah.
what could happen. Now, somebody just going out there and getting hurt
Mhm.
does not cover that.
Even if they are a member of triple MBA and they're out there and, you know, they're out using the trails and they get injured, are they covered by this liability insurance?
No.
No. So it has to be some kind of sanctioned maintenance or event.
That's pre-approved.
Okay,
Yes.
that's, yeah, I just want to make sure that's clear to all parties. You know, I'm not saying I agree with it or disagree with it. I just want to make sure everybody's clear on that. The other thing is it talks about this is a nature preserve. And what if the township decides to initiate some kind of nature preserve activities in some fashion that comes into conflict with what they want to do?
I think that's certainly covered in the agreement as well, with the township having the rights to redirect
Okay,
any parts of the park with notice. You know, there's notice required.
okay, so we retain that, right?
Yes.
And my final question is, when you were putting this together, was there any discussion, thought to, what if another group comes to us about one of our other parks or Anderson Park and they want to have some kind of agreement like this? Are we setting a precedent that's going to be onerous on your staff, on our enforcement, anything like that by enacting this?
I think this document covers that we would not have another group at Anderson Park while they are there. But the latter part of your question, yeah, certainly will allow, as we've had in the past, folks come and want to collaborate or do such things here.
So this is not the first time we've done something like this.
To this extent, this is the first time that we've
Okay.
done something like this. I mean, you know, previous ones, as you saw from back in 2008, was just a bullet point
Yes.
of, you know, kind of agreement type things. And we have some others with Capital City Renegades over at Grand Woods Park. And that's just more they just, you know, design the courses and do things like that and help us with keeping paths clear and so on. And we have pickleball group,
Mhm.
a nonprofit that does some things at Delta Mills, but nothing to this extent, if that
Okay.
helps answer the question.
Well, and to that point, thank you for expanding on that one bullet point. And this makes me feel much more comfortable having us covered. So thank you.
Any questions down on this end? Treasurer Fedewa.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, sorry, Karen. do you-
Oh,
The question was, are we gonna look at this every year, this agreement, or is this going to be?
This agreement calls to the end of 2030. So it's about a 5-year agreement.
Oh,
Yes.
I couldn't see it. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, trustee Monica. Treasurer Fedewa.
thank you. Overall, I think this agreement's pretty tightly written, obviously by attorneys. And one question, well, I actually have 3 questions. I can't find it in here, but I believe that there was some statement that these trails basically can be used by anybody.
Yes.
So that was
The park is,
abundantly clear,
absolutely.
that, you know, no exclusions, you know,
Correct.
and stuff like that. The item on the liability insurance, the way I read it, it says it has to be provided as proof upon execution of the agreement. I don't know if liability insurance is multi-year or if it's annual. Do we know if it's annual, are we gonna get an update on that every year?
Their particular insurance, I'm not sure, but they would have to have it cover the 5 years, whether they renew it annually or not. I'm gonna say they're probably gonna renew it annually, as we do with a number of other things that should receive.
I mean, they want to they might want to change insurance companies because they get a better rate or something. So how would we know what the insurance company is? I think there should be some notification if they change and if it's renewed.
Well, they would have to have insurance to cover each year. the agreement, and they can submit, and we can require them to submit it annually, which is probably what's gonna happen, you know, I mean, we still get annual insurance certificates for projects that have long gone from the township, but we can, certainly require that.
Well, I just think the agreement should require that. Yes, it's 5 years, but they could have a different insurance company, 5 different insurance companies, one each year, and we wouldn't know who they are. And I think that they should notify the township in that regard. And I don't see that language in here. I would suggest that, be considered in item number 15.
The proof of insurance should be presented
Yeah.
annually.
Should be kept current, in terms of apprising the township. I'm not really sure what the language would say, but that's the concept.
Okay, we'll take a look at that, and make sure.
Well, it says it can't be canceled within 30 days, without 30 days notice. So is that doesn't meet your needs?
Well,
Well,
they have
runs
insurance.
out.
It's just, it's not canceled. They have continuing insurance. It's just transitioned over to maybe a different insurance company. That's a possibility. And, if they have a 5-year policy, I don't know if they're making premiums on an annual basis or if it's all at once. What if they don't make it? But in that case, yeah, if 30 days, because they would be canceled by the insurance company, they would have an obligation to let us know. That is true.
Can I ask a point of clarity with Courtney? Are our liability policies multi-year or annual? I've never known one to not be annual.
Either.
Okay.
So adding language, something that says.
Well, they are,
annually?
they are
Because they're
annual.
automatically annual is what you're saying.
Right. And we have in here 30 days notice if they cancel.
If they
So-
cancel their insurance.
But what if they
Right.
just let it run out and don't renew it and then don't let us know? That's not canceling.
Well, we'd have to monitor it. If it's gonna be an annual, we'd have to know that if it's September the 1st, that we should expect to receive one every year.
Exactly.
So we're gonna have a tickler system to check this, to make sure that all the i's are dotted and the t's are crossed
Yes.
annually.
Just take a good close look at that. I'm just concerned there could be an oversight on that. Item number 18 on that has to do with compliance with laws and regulations. To comply with all federal, state, local laws and regulations applicable to them. Volunteers. Then it goes on to say, nobody shall be permitted to gather firewood, mushrooms, or consume or possess illegal substances, marijuana products, tobacco products, alcoholic beverages in Anderson Park or the designated area. You're taking all the fun out of it. But seriously, is there any prohibition of removing like plants that might be protected or, the point is this is a nature park. This is for everybody's enjoyment. And it's a pretty unique habitat along the river there with the ravines and gullies and everything like that. And some of those plants I know are just, their habitat is very singular to like a particular area. If someone wants to dig up ferns, for example, is that prohibited by this? I don't see it.
But I'd have to take a look at the park ordinance to make sure it's not covered there, but
Okay.
specifically in this.
You have no
agreement.
removal of vegetation, for example,
Right.
or anything like that. So, all right. Thank you.
Anything else on your list?
No.
Treasurer Buell? Trustee
Yeah, I
Pascarella?
appreciate those comments, Treasurer Fedor. I just wanna to kind of flag on the vegetation. I know, the association has done a great deal of work removing invasive plants that have been problematic in the park. And so I think we need to be really careful about that kind of language and anything that would say just prohibiting the removal of any vegetation because they've cleared out very aggressive, highly invasive vegetation that's covered taken over pathways and things like that. And so that's a great benefit to make the park more usable for everybody. So I just want to flag that broad provision might be problematic and actually hinder some of the value that's been brought to the park.
Treasurer Fedor?
Well, I think common sense dictates that, we're talking about native plants here. We're not talking about invasive species, but, Marcus, you can check what our ordinances are with the other parts of their compliance with us. Our other ordinances that would be covered. So,
We do have protection in our ordinances for removing plants or wood or
Can you speak up a little
saplings.
bit, Brian? So
Sorry. We do have protection of property and protection of environment in our parks ordinance. I think that covers destroying or removing any flower, plant or grass or any of those
native plants.
type things.
Well, native plants are pretty much protected by state law already, so I think it's the DNR actually that protects them, so.
Well, and I had an opportunity last week, I believe, to attend the Savvy Seniors, and they had a presenter from the Eaton County Conservatory where they talked about native plants and invasive plants and the restrictions and the work that they do. They need volunteers because they do go from park to park to try to address that, and they are indeed looking for great volunteers to come help with that. Anything else with this? Thank you. Anything else on this end? Clerk?
If not, I move that the Delta Township Board approve the Anderson Park agreement with the Mid-Michigan Mountain Bike Association and that the township manager be authorized to sign the agreement.
Support. It's been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Marcus, we are on to your next one.
Okay, of the previously mentioned October 21st, 2024 meeting. In addition to asking that we review the agreement and seek the agreement with the triple MBA, we're also asked to, based on the board's ruling of extending the hours for 6 months, which brings us back here. The recommendation from the Parks, Recreation, and Cemeteries Commission is that the hours for Anderson Park be extended from dawn until 10 p.m. year round. And I think the other items are stated here as well. The park rules, the recommended updates are there for you that the park's hours of operations will be as follows. Anderson Park daily from sunrise to says 9 p.m., but it's actually 10 p.m. was a recommendation from the Parks Commission. And then all other parks, daily from sunrise until dusk. The park hours will be publicly posted in a conspicuous place at each park location, such as the entrance or parking lot. That was a recommended change to the park rules.
What is the desire of the board?
I'd like to move that the Delta Township Board approve the new operating hours for Anderson Park as sunrise to 10 p.m. and that the park rules be updated with these new hours.
Is there support? Support. It's been supported in a double way here. Is there any discussion? Trustee Bowen.
Did the Parks Commission have any concerns about safety after sunset until 10 p.m.?
I think not directly. I mean, certainly the liability safety that we deal with on a daily basis until 9 p.m., and dark and so on. But, there's a lot of discussion about the lights that the bikers use and that, folks actually train for events and things of that nature. So there weren't any major concerns.
Okay, so no concerns that, and we talked about our liability and all that sort of thing. I'm just concerned at people being out in the woods at night after dark.
No, I think discussions along the lines of liability at night, will reinforce that we are covered from that
Right.
perspective.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Any more questions on this end? This side, any questions? Questions or comments? Okay, is there a motion?
You have it.
Oh, I
We
read
did
it.
Mhm.
Thank you. It's been a long night. Sorry about that. So we've had the motion, it's been supported, we've had discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Thank you. We have one opposition. to that, and that will be recorded. That motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marcus. We are now on to number 14. Authorization to ratify MOU covering lateral pay and the hiring of paramedics only. Is that you, Manager Reed, for this?
Sure. I can take this. So as those of you who have been on the board for a while know that we over the years have had the paramedic shortage. So it was kind of going that way and then hastened after COVID, and now we've hit quite a few retirements. So we are always looking for creative ways to fill all of our positions. Right now, as it stands, we're 3 or 4 short. A couple years ago, we did the Forward and Better program in which we were hiring basic EMTs and sending them to paramedic school. So that has been pretty successful, but it does also create a training burden on our staff, and until they become paramedics, they spend a lot of time in school for that year and a half or so. So we looked for other ways to bolster our efforts, and these are the ideas reflected here in this MOU are the pretty much the last 2 ideas we have to get us back to full staffing and put a premium on paramedics. So the first part of the MOU covers hiring a paramedic only, which is someone who has a paramedic license but has not been through the fire academy. So this individual getting through the fire academy is a lot quicker than going through paramedic school. The challenge with a paramedic only is they are not covered under the same FLSA exemptions that our firefighters are, that are allowed to work the 24-hour shifts and that type of thing. So they're more on a 40-hour work week for FLSA. So, but this would give us some flexibility and get folks who have a paramedic license who are interested in becoming firefighters as well, a quicker path to get there. And then the lateral pay is something that a lot of different departments have done just to recognize years of service. Obviously, in the fire service, there's pensions involved and that type of thing. So once you're with a department, it's hard to leave, especially if you have several years of service. So we have had some feedback from, applicants that, boy, I'd love to come to Delta, but I don't know if I can take, I might be able to take a small pay cut, but not a, $15,000 or $20,000 pay cut. So this would be a move in the direction to allow lateral pay, an agreement to allow lateral pay. And in the MOU, it also does help us because it would recognize those years as well for promotions. So folks might be able to get promoted sooner versus when you start at a new employer and have to wait a lot of years per the contract in order to get promoted. So and lastly, just, I'll thank the 2 chiefs that are here who spent a lot of time on this, and Aaron, of course, as well, putting this MOU together and negotiating with the union, who did ratify it, as I put in my memo last week or the week before. But happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? If not, we'll move into a motion. There is one. Trustee Bowen?
I move that the Delta Township Board authorize the township manager to enter into the attached memorandum of understanding with the Delta Township Professional Firefighters Union, IAFF Local 2846, for retention and recruitment efforts in the Delta Township Fire Department.
Is there support?
Support.
It's moved and supported. Is there any discussion? Hearing none,
I'd
yes.
just like to say that I'm so pleased that we are exploring creative ways to bolster our public safety professionals.
Any further discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes unanimously. We are now on to 15. Manager Reed, is there any introduction for that? needed?
Peter.
Okay, this is a special use permit request to establish an accessory dwelling unit at 7312 Williamsburg Road. Williamsburg is a block south of Michigan Avenue, east of Canal. So just near, and this particular property backs up to the elementary school. So there have been, at least during my time here, one other accessory dwelling unit. In a nutshell, the regulations that we have on the books for accessory dwelling units are we allow them in our single family zoning districts. They have to be attached to the principal dwelling and they have to be occupied by family members. I mean, that's basically it. So there's a fairly narrow qualification there. This property does meet all of that. The property is proposed to convert the attached garage into a 394 square foot ADU for the property owner's father. So the planning commission held its public hearing on this request at its meeting on April 14th, so last Monday, and recommended approval subject to 7 conditions. I do want to go over those really quick because they're intended to address the regulations for the specific SLUP regulations for this type of land use. What I do want to draw attention to are what we had done with the previous accessory dwelling unit for a different property because I think the natural question is, well, how are you going to enforce this? How do you know what's going on? And we don't necessarily always know everything, but we're able to draft a affidavit that would be recorded with the property, acknowledging compliance with the ordinance provisions for this type of use. But then also that would come up in the title search for buyers to alert other buyers to know, because the issue is now not so much with the attached units, but if the space is used for one family, so in this case, it's for a father-in-law who lives there, it's completely suited for kind of like, it's an apartment essentially. The tendency, I guess, for future owner, what do we do with the space? I'm going to lease it to somebody from outside the family. So that would at least alert people that we can't control bad actors or someone that would go against the ordinance, but it would alert them that these are the standards and this space could be used. It just couldn't be used to release to a third party or non-family member. So there's a motion in your meeting packet to recommend, to approve the special land use permit subject to these conditions. Please do let me know if you have any questions. The applicant is here to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Peter. Is there a motion? And then we'll go into discussion. Is there a motion? Trustee Cascarilla.
I move that the Delta Township Board of Trustees approve the special land use permit request from NWS Architect LLC to convert an attached garage into a 394 square foot accessory dwelling unit at 7312 Williamsburg Road, parcel number 040-500-500-00, as described in case number PSL number 2025-0001, subject to the following conditions, of which there are 7.
Is there support for the motion?
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Is there any discussion? Clerk Clark.
Peter, is the idea, which I think is a good one, to have the language of the deed become our new baseline norm? Because obviously we can't make it retroactive for the other, but this and all going forward, we have the deed restriction.
Yeah, that's what,
Is the
it's not in
intent.
the ordinance, but that seemed like a good measure to include it.
Yes.
With the special land use permits, we can do conditions to ensure that they meet our ordinance. So I think this is the perfect example use of that, and we could require it moving forward. And I plan to.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I just had a thought. Is there a separate address for this dwelling or it's the same address as the main house? Or will-
They would be the same address as the main house.
Awesome. All right. Any other questions? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes.
Thank you.
Okay, now we are on to number 16, the bank intercounty drain project funding. I think that's gonna be Courtney
Yeah.
coming up to talk to us.
So as the board is aware, we've been working on how we want to deal with our at-large portion of the bank intercounty drain assessment, which is $12.9 million. So we've been talking through cash balances and future plans and all kinds of stuff over the last 2 weeks. And kind of come to this idea that we can pass a reimbursement resolution, which sort of locks in our ability to do a bond, just in case at any point we decide that we do want to do a bond to pay this off completely. We can also afford to put down $5 million in cash, which will immediately lower the assessment and our payment that we'll have to make in 2026. And then as part of that too, the next item is actually the continuing disclosure that's required since we will be participating in the county portion of the bond. So the memo outlines where we would take the $5 million from. And then the action tonight would just be to pass the resolution, the reimbursement resolution, and then authorize the release of the $5 million so that we can get that over to the county and they know that they don't have to include that in their big bond issue.
Okay, we need a motion and then we'll go into discussion. Is there a motion first? Trustee Mohica?
I move that the Delta Township Board adopt the reimbursement resolution for the bank intercounty drain project and authorize the release of $5 million from general fund to the intercounty drain board for the bank drain project.
Support.
Is there support? It's been, did I hear you, trustee or treasurer? If you want, it's been moved and supported. Is there any discussion now? There is no discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes, Courtney. Now you're on to your next one, number 17.
Yeah, so we actually have two at-large drain assessments, one that everyone is aware of and one that some people are aware of, but the lead drain is also a small assessment though. That's right, yeah. Some of this very table
That's very
is
familiar.
aware of, so it's a much, much smaller assessment. It's, I think our share is in the like $140,000, somewhere in there. So this is just kind of boilerplate stuff that we've passed before to participate. It doesn't put any added burden on the township because we do continuing disclosure resolutions. This just allows in this case, the bank intercounty drain and the Eaton County Drain Commissioner to issue bonds on the open market with our support. It doesn't add anything to our plate.
Is there a motion? Trustee Feta, Bedouin.
I move the Delta Township Board adopt a resolution to authorize official statement on continuing disclosures together with the bank intercounty drain and the league drainage district bonds.
Support. It's been moved and supported. Is there any discussion? Trustee Bowen.
Should I recuse myself because I live in the Lee drain?
I don't believe that
No.
that's an issue.
Okay.
Senator Reed or.
But
No.
acknowledging it, just for the, covers you for the minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I will put that
Thank
in.
you.
Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Thank you. We are now on to number 18. This is going to be Manager Reed.
Yes, so as you're aware, we have been working with Waverly Schools on converting the Colt Elementary School into the north half as a senior center with help from a $10 million appropriation from Representative Whitwer. The southern half of the building is the early childhood. Oh boy, I can't remember the early childhood educational center. So as of next year, they will not have elementary students at Colt. So as we've been working through, they had they were going to be renovating part of Colt as part of the Waverly Schools bond issue that they passed several years ago. So designing this project is a little complex because you have our half of the building, Waverly's half of the building. There's some shared appurtenances or HVAC, roof, those types of things. And then there's also site costs, and then there is some additional there's some additional code issues that are have been triggered by us changing the use of that building. So some of those costs have been assigned to us, mostly in the site work, and a lot of it has to do with utilities, extension of water main, some additional drainage requirements for affecting the parking lot and that type of thing. So as we work through schematic design, we were dialing in this project. Now we're in regular design. A lot of hard work from Aaron and Marcus and several, a couple other folks of Marcus's staff. Tammy, our senior coordinator, and Corey in the Parks Department. So as of last week or the week before, we were still a bit over budget as it was estimated into this project. So I think we will get it back into the project budget because we did have quite a bit of money set aside for equipment that we can use towards construction. But it would be very helpful to be able to carry over some funds remaining in our bond issues that were issued for water main and pathway improvements to help with the infrastructure improvements to make the project a success that we want it to be.
Thank you, Manager Reed. Is there a motion? And then we'll go into discussion. Is there a motion?
Hang on, let me find it, yes. I move that the Delta Township Board authorize the township manager to utilize up to $450,000 of bond funds issued for water main and pathway improvements for the use of infrastructure installation at Code Elementary for purposes of the conversion to a senior center.
Is there support?
Sure.
Support by Treasurer Fedewa. Is there any discussion? Trustee Bowen.
What is the breakdown? It says the school and the township were awarded $10 million. What is the breakdown of funding? But then you said the school is also using some of their millage funding. And what is the
Correct.
breakdown between what's being used for the senior center, what's being used for the school? Is it 50-50 of that 10 million? Or is it, how's it breaking down?
The 10 million is all being used for the senior center. There is some that is, as I said, there's some crossover because there's different things that you have to do for the whole building.
Right.
So as of the last estimate, it was roughly $6 million in the design costs for the early childhood education center. Roughly close to $6 million in construction for the senior center, and then a little over $3 million for site work. So right now for construction only, we were over $9 million for the senior center. So then you add in the contingency, the design costs, all the different general conditions, those types of things.
It's not cheap.
But
It
it's
is.
gonna do something really great for our seniors. Any other questions or comments? Seeing and hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. Now we're on to number 19, Manager Reed. You want to start that off?
Oh, sure. Well, Supervisor Brewer attended an event for the United States Conference of Mayors and provided some of the list of current provisions in the federal legislation reconciliation bill. And just asked if it would be helpful to support these issues. Certainly, we definitely have an interest in protecting the tax exempt municipal bonds. There's some other policy issues reflected in that letter from the United States Conference of Mayors. So we wanted to bring it to the board and be happy to draft a letter if there's support on behalf of the entire board for the municipal, tax-free municipal bonds, and include any of the other policy issues if so desired.
And I just wanted to say, I thought number one was pivotal because that impacts our ability to get bonds and all of that. So I thought if we, as a collective board, wanted to write a letter to say, yes, this matters to us, that would be great if that's the desire of the board. The other measures, I believe, are being addressed, not as major as this number one on this list. So I leave that up to you all if that's something you'd like for Brian to draft a letter from the board saying, you know, that we are concerned with the reconciliation bill, that this be covered.
I have lots of questions.
Sure.
Number one, since we are not a city, are we eligible for this? Number one. And number two, so we would be issuing tax credits? Or
No,
No.
they're federal tax
The
credits?
low-income housing tax credits, I believe, are federal tax credits that route through MISTA. So we would not be issuing them.
Okay, but are we eligible? Are residents eligible? We're not a city. That's why I'm asking you. This is from the National Conference of Mayors?
Yes, it is. And I had made a mistake. I was most interested in number three, not number one. So forgive me for that. It's number three that was of interest to me. Number one, they're all important, but number three, I think would have an impact on us. So forgive me for that. Was there, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Mary.
No, that's fine. You're good.
Yeah, so it was the proper, to protect the tax exempt municipal bonds, including private activity bonds. I don't know if there's anything Courtney would like to add to that, and why that's important. They have it.
Yeah.
So if that's something we'd like to do, Treasurer Fiedel?
yeah, I have a question. I'm assuming that they are concerned that there is discussion in Congress about eliminating the tax exempt status.
Yes.
Okay. Now that's what's precipitating this.
Yes.
But I don't know if you can answer this. What's a private activity bond?
The answer to private activity bond. Do you know anything about that, Courtney? I'm not an expert in this area. I just thought if
I've
we're
never seen that term
impacted.
before.
I have. I
Do you,
don't-
Have you?
if you,
Yeah,
What is-
I'm not
think that's
intimately
just what they
familiar,
call-
but it's like, I'm,
I think that's just
The
what they
term
call
is like-
tax exempt bonds that are issued by municipalities or governments. It's just the name. A name that the market uses. It's not necessarily a term that we use. But they're basically just, that's another name for tax exempt securities issued by state or local governments. So all the bonds that we issued would be private activity bonds.
Okay.
So yeah, it just lowers the interest rate that we pay because there are more people want them because they're tax exempt.
I personally don't have an issue with, lending our name to the communication.
anybody concerned with us doing that? I'd like it that we speak up about, listen, don't tap into something that's important to us as they're going through the process of voting on the reconciliation bill.
I remember we did something similar when the state was considering things about business personal property exemptions, because that would really impact our tax base here. So I think that this is along those same lines, just at the federal level.
Are we comfortable with Manager Reed drafting up something saying,
Do you want to do the
That-
move?
pardon me,
Do you want to do the motion?
do I want to?
There's a motion in the.
Sure.
Okay.
You want to do the motion? Go
I
ahead.
can, yes.
Thank
I
you.
move that the Delta Township Board submit a letter of support to include provisions in the federal reconciliation bill to protect tax exempt municipal bonds, including private activity bonds that greatly benefit Delta Township and other municipalities as a tool for financing infrastructure improvements and any other provisions as apply to us.
Is there support?
Support.
Excellent. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm not opposed. I just had a question.
Sure, go ahead.
So, so what happens now, like, we send the letter and then what happens? And then they come back to us and they say, hey, you're good.
Thanks a lot.
You're good to
Thanks,
go.
but no thanks. No, I believe, and I'll turn to the trustee Coscarella, what happens when people speak? How does that matter at all? She deals with this every day.
I would just say TBD. I doubt we'll get a formal response, but maybe we will.
There you go. Okay, but at least we can say we put our voice out.
All right, well, that's what I'm asking.
Right.
Okay, yep.
Okay, any opposition? Hearing none, that motion passes. Thank you for that. We're moving right along at 7:35. We are to board and commission appointments. Trying to get to that page, forgive me. Let me get down to that. And I will go over that with you. This is an area that I always look forward to when we can sort of recognize and thank the people that are in our community that say, yes, I'm willing to serve, and here's how I would like to serve. So recently we had an interview session. They're 15-minute sessions. They're not that long, but they're not that short. And I believe Josh was able to join us. Our time got a little off, so we missed Andrea, but we had our time off a little bit that day. But Josh participated in all of the interviews, and Peter and Marcus, I believe we did. Did we do Peter and Marcus or just Peter that day? Just you. We had a lot. We did. And so the commission that we were addressing that day was the Corridor Improvement Authority. And these are the recommendations that came out of that meeting. Bill Du Bois, who was already on the board, his term had ended. It was time for a reappointment. He was in the business seat, because is there 5 business seats, Peter? You feel free to come up here and just let me know. With the CIIA, it's very specific on what seats they have available for whom.
That is correct. So I have a cheat sheet here I'm gonna pull up. I don't trust my own memory on anything.
Me either.
So it is by the nature of the position, the supervisor, the township. There are 5 business owner positions. It's labeled as business/property owner. And then there are 2 at-large members. It can be anybody. And then there's a resident requirement that either live in the CIA district or within a half mile of that district. And in this case, the resident is Peggy Von Payne. She lives on Barrington Court, just south of Menards. So she's close.
And the business positions, you don't have to own the position or own the business. You can work for a business on the corridor.
Yeah, state law doesn't really go into a lot of detail on that. So that doesn't really seem prescribed in state law. In my experience, there's been a fairly liberal interpretation of that, just that a person, and not policy setting, but that the person at least either own or work at a business in the corridor.
So Peter, I'm sorry, just for clarity, you're saying that Donald Lovell is replacing Peggy Von Payne?
I haven't gotten there yet.
Oh, he said Peggy. I wasn't clear who he was.
No, I was making a reference to the Peggy being the resident and just what
I got you.
that criteria
She's
is.
filling the resident that lives
Gotcha.
so close. He was talking about the different categories
Right.
that the board could have on it, that can serve on it.
Oh, yeah.
Does that make sense? Okay. So the first person is Bill Du Bois. He is going to be moved into the at-large member position because we had a candidate that Josh and I interviewed, and that's Donald Lovell. Did I say it? I think he's here.
Lavelle, isn't it?
Lavelle, I'm horrible with these names. I'm gonna get better. Donald Lavelle interviewed for the business owner position. He has a business in the corridor. And so we are recommending him. And then Keith Wright was also recommended for your consideration for a 4-year term as going into the business owner seat. He does not own a business, but he works for the credit union, I believe, here on the corridor,
Consumers Credit Union by the Delta
Which is-
Crossings Development.
in line with, as you were interpreting the statute. So these 3 names, I think I don't know if all 3 are here. All 3 are here?
2 of the 3 are here tonight.
2 of the 3.
Well,
So,
okay.
Donald is here. Would you raise your hand or please stand? This is Donald. And then Keith Wright is here. And he's here. And Keith is always at the meetings. He's always in attendance at the CIA meetings. And Donald had expressed an interest to becoming active within the community. You have an IT business on the corridor? There you go. And how long have you had that business?
20 years.
20 years. Okay, great. So these are the 3 that we are bringing forth, and I will make the motion to move that the aforementioned persons be appointed to the identified township board of or commissions, and that the clerk hereby is directed to send notification to the selected individuals informing them of their appointment. Is there support?
Support.
And is there any discussion? Trustee or Treasurer Fedewa?
Thank you, Supervisor
Sure.
Brewer. I've taken a deep breath and a look back at this whole process. And I just wanted to have an open discussion about this. I think there's a lot of assumptions that have been made and are continuing to be made. My concern that this, in my opinion, it might be analogous to a runaway train. And I think we need to consider maybe pumping the brakes a little bit on what our assumptions are of what eligibility is, or at least get some definition that we agree on what it is. And as a matter of history, going back to 2021, when we appointed board member who works for the Board of Water and Light, and I'd asked the question, I said, well, where's the nexus of an employee who works for a company? They're not a business owner and they don't have a business interest in a property. And that's what the statute says. So I do recall asking this question way back when, and I was informed at a subsequent board meeting that, oh yeah, we got an attorney opinion on that. And so, okay, and I never saw it, so I asked for it today. That's the handout that's in front of you. And basically to summarize this, because this is the first time I've seen it since it was issued. Personally, I've never seen this before. But the question was asked, the statute says you have to be an owner or have a business interest in property. So you have to be a property owner, or which assuming means a building, or a business interest in the property. So that's the statute. At the bottom of the attorney opinion, I guess, letter opinion, it says that neither the terms ownership or business interest are defined within the statute. So in our opinion, therefore, using general definitions, the Board of Water and Light qualifies under either prong of the requirement, and it goes on to say that, it's in the area, it's within the district, development district and all that. So the issue that I have with this opinion is saying that using general definitions, because the definitions are not defined in statute. And we have 4 previous state workers here sitting in this board. And I think we all remember that if the legislature does not give specific authority to local government, they do not have the authority, period. So if the legislature in this language, which I think is very clear, is that they want to have a business owner, an owner of property and have a business interest in the property, which could be a partner. It could be someone like that. That is pretty clear to me. And I think this particular opinion took some liberties in its interpretation. As Peter said, it's been liberally interpreted before. And I'm looking at what we're doing here in my next page that I have there, I put together. And I just reiterated the actual statute that the members shall have an ownership or a business interest in property located in the development area. And then some common definitions that I saw is that what is a business interest in the property, and does an employee have a business interest in the property? And you can read that on your own. But when we get down to the actual people who have been appointed or are being recommended being appointed here, I put together this list that Peter had provided me. And we have 2 actual property owners, business owners. We have one that has a nexus as a result of this attorney's opinion that we received back in 2001 in the Board of Water and Light. Being recommended is a Mr. Du Bois as an at-large, I believe. We have Ms. Payne as the resident standing. We have Ms. Elsinger, another at-large. Those are our 3. And now there are 2 potential vacancies that need to be filled. And even under the attorney's opinion, you know, I question whether that these 2 are actually technically eligible for appointment. Because in the case of the Board of Water and Light, that individual is a community liaison designated by that business to represent that business within the community. And I don't think that exists here for these 2 nominations that you're providing. Could they get that? Possibly. And one is not a business, does not own space, but only rent space. So the way I look at this is that even within this the attorney's opinion is that these are becoming really a stretch in assuming the qualifications and the criteria that's set forth, not only just the statute, which I think is more stringent, but even under the auspices of this attorney's letter that we received back in 2021. So I just want to have a general discussion about this and see if we have an agreement of what the criteria is and what are we trying to accomplish with our appointees with the CIA. I know we want people who are engaged. We want people who are involved in a business. Within that criteria, though, I mean, do they qualify? Have they been designated by their employer to represent them, for example? To me, that would be in compliance with the attorney's letter. But then there's also, even under that, do they have a business interest that in the property itself of where they're located? I'm going to give you an example. I want to start a business. I do an LLC. Everything that I do is online. I have an office and I have a nameplate on a door of a place I rent, but I don't necessarily occupy it. And everything is either through email or it's through electronic transactions or it's through a post office. Under that, do I qualify to be appointed to the CIA under that scenario?
Are you finished with your comments or?
That's the comparison, in the extreme that I want to point out to this board. So
Thank you.
I just think we need to take a good hard look as to what are we trying to accomplish with our interested parties, but do they really meet the criteria? And I think everybody here probably has an opinion about that. Thank you.
Thank you. And I know that we discussed this a while back, years ago too. So, but I welcome any additional conversations or comments, Trustee Bowen. before I comment?
The way I come at this is, and everybody knows that I was not a supporter of the CIA, but the CIA is the same as a downtown development authority for a city. Now, we're not a city, so we can't have a DDA. But my concept of the DDA and the CIA as its corollary is that it is supposed to be focused on small business owners within the district to promote, you know, the local nature, the local tax base businesses. And if we have people who are representing, say, Consumers Credit Union, and they have one branch in the CIA, but their headquarters are elsewhere and they've got lots and lots of branches, you know, what is their interest in our particular corridor? Is it the same as someone who's running a mom and pop restaurant or a boutique or something that's, you know, downtown kind of thing? You know, what is their interest? What is their vision for the corridor? Is it gonna be the same as like a DDA with, you know, small businesses, or is it something different? Because a credit union can be anywhere. So my concern is that that the people who are sitting on our board beyond Tony and Scott, who own businesses and property in the corridor, that, you know, they're the only two who have that vested interest in what's going to be done in the corridor, how it's going to impact them financially, and by extension, the rest of the township. So it's a little bit different view than what the treasurer is saying, but still a concern about who we are putting on here to marshal these funds.
Any other thoughts? Any other comments?
I have a question
Josh?
for Peter. You were here when we got this, right?
When you got what?
In October 2021.
I wasn't.
No,
He
it was
was
not.
Oh, Brian, you were.
Thankfully, no.
Brian was.
A step away.
When they wrote, said neither of the terms ownership or business interests are defined within the statute, did you guys do anything to change it?
It's a state statute.
State statute.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's it.
And just for point of clarification, a township can have a DDA. We're not exempt from a DDA.
Thank you. And I just want to add a couple of comments for your consideration. One, the two gentlemen, or excuse me, there are two people that were listed, Bill and Keith, both checked with their employer and received permission and authorization to participate on the board, and that it was not a conflict of interest and they were clear that they are representing from their experience level. They are not a spokesperson for their company, but they are representing their business experience in the community. So I want to say that about two of the three people. One is a business owner. While he may not own the space, he operates as a vested business owner and has done so for 20 years.
In the same space?
In that space. Am I right? In that space? In that space. To pay the township taxes. So for me, I'm
He
not
doesn't
going
live in
to
the township.
minimize that experience and what he brings to the table for us. And I want to just say that these are people that will show up. They didn't have to volunteer for this. They didn't have to go through the process. It's not like we've got a list of 5 million people who are saying, count me in, I want to do this. We don't. We do not. And I honor that they want to share their expertise and be a part of the creation of what we're trying to do with the corridor. I think that's huge. I think that's great. And as I said, these are people that will show up. So this is my recommendation. I see Beth, I see Trustee Coscarelli, and I see Clerk Clark.
Just a quick question. So the Crown Plaza is not in the corridor authority district. So is he
Bill is
representing?
not with the Crown Plaza. Are
Okay.
you thinking Crown? Is that what you're talking about?
14 years at Crown Plaza, Lansing
He
West?
worked for the Crown Plaza.
Okay.
Now he's with
Farm Bureau.
Bureau.
Farm Bureau.
Oh, okay.
But he's coming in as an at-large member.
Bill's with Farm Bureau.
Yes.
him.
He's
So,
with
so
Farm
not as a representative of
Right.
Farm
He
Bureau
would be he's an at-large.
that does own, okay. I didn't know we had at-large. I thought it was all business owners.
No.
Mhm. We have a
Trustee
resident
Coscarelli,
in-
and then Clerk Clark.
Yeah, I just, want to thank Treasurer Fedewa for bringing this, I'm incredibly grateful for the interest and the commitment to our community and the interest in serving. So it has nothing to do with the applicants. But, I wasn't aware of the legal counsel memo on the BWL appointment, representative appointment to the CIA, and I'm grateful that we have that. But I do think it's important to make sure, and I don't know if we've
I thought we went down this road for that position a while back. Didn't we talk about we talked about the BWL?
Why, no, I just didn't
So
know
interesting.
this
Yeah, with
existed.
regard to this.
That's all. I'm not saying, I recall the discussion we had. But I do wonder if we need legal clarity. We've seen where we didn't have that on circumstances where it had unintended consequences. And it may, I don't know if we have the luxury to make assumptions about how we interpret what law says or not, and it just might be helpful that we have that clarity to help guide us with appointments. And I appreciate the challenge we have, and wonderful to have exceptional candidates that want to serve and show up. That is truly appreciated. But I just think, as separate from all of that, that it is important that we make sure legally we are complying with what the law allows us to do with regard to appointments. So it's, I think, a smaller detail, but important. And not just with this, but just going forward, if there are any issues, I do think there's value in that. And we shouldn't just make assumptions about whether or not we think that is acceptable.
Thank you, Trustee Coscarelli. I'm going to go to Clerk Clark and then back to you, Treasurer.
Yeah.
Clerk Clark.
Peter, when does, Tony come off the board? Do you know?
It's a lot of Peter on screen there. What was that? I'm sorry.
When does Tony McGaldy come off the board?
It'll take me 1 second, but I will find it.
I think it's 27.
It's 27?
I think it is.
Okay,
I can tell
and same
you.
with, Scott. I'm sure he's about the same time. I think we did it. I think we appointed them about the same time. I do think it's important that we have property owners of businesses on the board, which right now we have 2. I think that as a board, we need to take care of how the public perceives what we say and do when we sit here. Having people engage and want to be engaged with our township is really important to us meeting our mission and our goals. And I went through this when we set up the CIA. And if you go back and watch that series of meetings, it's almost embarrassing how candidates were put under fire for their desire to be engaged with the township and had an interest in what we were attempting to do. That said, I hope we're not repeating that behavior at any time ever in our role as decision makers. If there's a legal issue then there's a legal issue that needs to be clarified. But placing value on whether or not one person's business has a flashing neon sign and the next person's doesn't, whether it's intentional or subconscious, covert or overt, I just think we have to take care in how respectful we are to people who come before us and share an interest in our township.
Thank you. Treasurer Fedor?
You know, nobody wants to dissuade any resident, you know, that, or even non-resident, as the case is before us, to, you know, want to be engaged in the township for improving the township. But, you know, the corridor authority is different than a lot of our other commissions and boards. The legislation was very, very specific, and not only in terms of makeup with having 5 business owners or a business interest in property, period. But it also said there has to be a majority of the members as well. So, because we decided to have 9, that requires 5. You know, so I think we need to be cognizant of that. I do think there's a legal issue here. I do think that the letter opinion took some liberties in its interpretation. But I think we know as professionals that have been in the business is that, you know, as a local unit of government, we can't take those liberties when we don't have the authority to do so in state statute. And so what I would suggest that we do is that we ask for clarification. And how we do that, we can either go back to this law firm, or we could ask, as an example, and I've done this before in my past professional career, you know, we could ask our state representative or state senator to request a letter of opinion from the Attorney General on such a matter. And they would be looking at it not as a client of Delta Townships, but they'll be looking at the state statute and how it applies as in terms of legislative intent. And I think that would clarify it. That's just my personal opinion. And that would set the stage for how the township should proceed in any way the decision or the recommendation comes out in the future, without this luxury of interpretation of how we want it to be. I think that can get us in trouble. So I'm just throwing that out there, but there is a legal issue here, and I just wanted to bring it before the board.
Thank you. Manager Reed, is there anything that you'd want to add to this discussion about we should proceed with a legal opinion or a verification of our legal standing? I'll be right with you. Before proceeding?
No, I mean, just to clarify, I was here. I wish I wasn't here during that time period, but I was just asked to get a legal opinion on because it was a matter around Calvin Jones and whether or not he was. So I don't remember if this was passed out or if it was just reported at a meeting that we received a legal opinion that it was a legal appointment. I mean, I will say in my experience, having been worked with 2 different DDAs in my previous jobs, I mean, we have members of banks or what, there's just usually are different people who are not the actual business owner or property owner. That being said, if it's the board's desire to make sure that there's clarification or that type of thing, we can move forward with that.
Keep going, and then I'll get to Andrea.
Yeah, I'm done.
Trustee Councilwoman?
Yeah, thank you. Brian, I just think it's helpful for us to have the legal clarification on this, because I don't think we have it. And in my opinion, it's just having that clarification has nothing to do with the candidates themselves, but we need to know, I think having an opinion from legal counsel just provides us, one, confidence in the decision that we're making, but certainty that we're proceeding appropriately. I appreciate the comments, Treasurer Fedewa. I don't think a formal AG opinion is probably necessary or appropriate, will take a long time. And so we'd be waiting and I don't want the delay. I think it'd probably be most appropriate just to, whether it's this firm or whomever we may choose to solicit, but I think it just helps to have that backing and that clarity.
So just,
Oh, no, go ahead.
I was-
Come to you, Trustee Bowen.
I just want to make sure when we're done, I get clarity of what the exact question I'm asking the attorneys.
Is do you have to be a business owner,
Property
a
owner.
property owner?
Well,
Is it, it's more than that.
it's more than that, and I think we need to articulate that. And if I may.
Yes, give me
if I-
1 second.
Yeah.
Trustee Bowen, was there something you wanted to add before we
Uh,
get a specific list?
no, I can add it after. You can
I'm sorry.
continue with this. I'll comment after. Let's continue with this line of thought.
Thank you.
Treasurer
I wasn't suggesting a formal Attorney General opinion. I was suggesting a letter opinion, which is not a formal opinion.
Either way, I'm just saying.
Okay,
to the
so,
Attorney General.
but
Yeah.
at least that would provide clarity on a statewide basis. I am concerned about how this question came back and the liberty and of interpretation, if you will, by this attorney said, in our opinion, using general definitions because there are not definitions in the state statute, I think is a questionable.
So what would be your specific
Response.
questions,
So-
trustee?
Well,
Treasurer.
I'm not going to try to, compose something right here and now.
Okay.
But I think what we could ask is Brian to put something together that we can comment on. Because I think we need to have some clarity. As an example, how do you compare this statement you did before with the fact that if the law is silent, the local unit of government does not assume the authority to do something. Okay, they don't have the authority to do something if it's not expressly given by the legislature.
Well, that would be something we would ask of our attorney.
And that's established. That's just established. So that is something that I would want to see is very specific on that. And in particular the nexus they used with the Board of Water and Light is that the person, yes, the Board of Water and Light has property. They have power lines. But how do you reconcile that if you do not have even if you don't have a business interest in property per se? And how do you reconcile that? So that would be part of the question as well. It'd probably be a multi-part question is what I'm suggesting. And I would like to have Manager Reed actually put together a proposed letter. And if it is to the Dickinson Wright or whoever we want to ask now, then fine, but we'd have an opportunity to comment on it.
Thank you. Is there any other thoughts or suggestions
For the attorney?
what I'm asking is, are you interested in seeking a legal opinion for clarification purposes, which I think is a good idea. I don't have a problem with that. I do not. And asking Manager Reed to seek a legal opinion on our behalf. But he's got to be clear on what it is we want him to ask. So if you have specific question, some thought that you would like for him to begin the drafting, I would suggest, if you guys are in agreement with it, that you get it to him within the next 5 days. so that we can bring this back. I'd like to bring this back, have a discussion about it whenever we have the opinion and move forward with I'm okay. I apologize to our candidates that we hold off until we have a legal opinion, unless there's something else that the board chooses to do. If you want to move forward with these and get the legal opinion and deal with it from that point forward, whatever the desire is of the board to do today, I will consider.
Well, I mean, if we're gonna seek a legal opinion, I'd rather we hold off than
Yeah.
and then take it back, because I just don't think that that's a good look for us, honestly. That's my opinion.
Trustee Malika, everybody is good with that. I am good with that. And I apologize for the candidates being here. They're saying, okay, no problem. Appreciate your patience, but it is important that we walk legally. And that the interpretation that's given by the attorney, that we are on board with that. And we're all clear minds. I don't believe in working where you're not clear. So I am in support of that. I thank you, Treasurer Fedewa, for that. But if we're gonna have to help Brian out with this. So if there are some specific areas, you've got the 2021 document. You could take a look at that. If there's a mirrored question that you want to ask, get it to Brian before Monday of next week so that he can do the work that he needs to do. And I don't know how long it will take for that legal opinion, but we will hold off. Sorry, Peter, because I don't know if that creates a challenge for you and your board. But we will hold off until Brian gets us that legal opinion. And when we get the legal opinion, it'll come before the board again, and then we will go from there. Trustee Malika?
Just to remind me, how many seats do we have for the CIA board?
We have, Peter, how many seats do we have? 9?
Nine.
Teach the supervisor.
And in your binder, you should have the list of boards. So everybody has this. We should have that. I use it all the time, but just take a look at that. So there are 9. Peter, is there anything you want to add to this? We are going to, Mary, what's the appropriate thing? Table it, withdraw it. Did we have a motion? We had a motion. There was a motion.
It's your motion, so you can withdraw your motion.
Okay, I withdraw
your
my motion.
Mhm.
Does it need to be
Seconded.
supported? Okay, it's seconded by Treasurer Fedewa.
No.
No, I
Oh,
said,
no.
what's your motion seconded?
Yes, it was.
Yes, it was.
By Joshua.
Joshua.
Oh, you mean initially?
So I think Robert's rules require us to approve that withdrawal if it's been seconded.
Correct.
So
So is there all in favor of approving the withdrawal of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
We have one opposition to withdrawing the motion, but it does pass. So we will get a legal opinion. You have until Monday to get your questions to Brian so that he can formulate a letter, something coherent to seek a legal opinion on so that we can put this to rest, because this came up years ago. I think we had some question with the Board of Water and Light Seat. I don't know whatever really happened with it, but nothing changed.
Is there a time, like, do we have to fill these by?
Well, these are, Peter, how many are vacant?
The 3 of these
Yeah,
would make us a full CIA board.
Right. And so the next CIA board meeting is,
May 12.
May 12th is coming up.
But that would
This
be
is also
after
time
next-
for elections for that board too.
They did postpone their officer elections to
Till
get through
we-
this.
Right. So I would really like to get this taken care of in the month of May, if we can.
Yep.
You know, if we have the legal opinion and address it. But I know one thing that I will be asking of Brian, and I'll just say it here, is if we have someone that's already on the board that's in question, what do we do? So we do have a Board of Water and Light representative. So when you talk to the legal, because we have someone in place.
Put that question in writing.
To read by Monday?
Yes.
I will do that. I can do that, but again, I want to
Brian.
provide my sincere apologies, but this is how things work. This is how it works. We want to do things right and in order. And so we appreciate your patience. We're gonna get there. We're gonna get a clear answer and go from there. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Trustee Bowen.
And this is my comment that I wanted to make earlier. I wanted to agree with Clerk Clark that yes, it is incumbent upon us. It is our duty to treat our designees to our boards and commissions with utmost respect because we do appreciate their contributions. And with that, and in addition to that, we owe it to everyone who is on the boards to make sure that new appointees are qualified, that they will contribute. And especially with the CIA, it is our duty to make sure that the right people are on the boards because they are dispersing public money. And that is a sacred trust that we all take on as elected officials and members of the CIA take on as appointed officials. And so, yes, we do respect them and we thank them and we want to do right by them and have the best people possible.
Oh, we do, and I think we have a good cohort.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Trustee Bowen. All right, do we need a 5-minute break? Or are you good to keep going? Keep going. There's snacks back there. If you want anything, there's, thank you for the water, Mary. We're gonna push through. We are on to the manager report. There's snacks available behind me. If you guys need anything, we get hangry if we don't have something. I'm just telling you.
Something back for you.
And for the board member candidates, you do not have to stay. It's been a long night. We value you. We will be in touch with you.
Step out for a minute too.
Yes, did we get a treat? Did we get some
Yes.
snacks? Come back and get something. That's the least we could do is feed you something. Thank you, Trustee Mohica. Yeah, just take as much as you want. Go.
I appreciate it.
Thank you for hanging in there.
Yes, we appreciate you. Thank you so much. All right, Manager Reed.
Thank you Supervisor Brewer and board members. Just a couple things. This weekend, we did have a tree crash down on our bridge on the east-west pathway. So luckily it was on the far west side of it. So Marcus, they inspected it today. So we have to replace quite a few pieces of railing, but it does not appear anything structural damaged it. So we looked out there because had that been towards more the middle of the bridge, who knows, it could have been a more of a structural issue. And we've invested hundreds of thousands of dollars into that bridge and both sides of that pathway in recent years as well. I just want to remind board members, there's a public information session coming up for the MDOT Boulevard on May 15th from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. Speaking of the CIA. Also Wednesday, there's a Sharp Park groundbreaking for our parks project there at 1 p.m. I think all of you have that on your calendar. So we'll look forward to seeing you there. Aaron is doing great work on our chill grant. So we have 11 properties that have had site visits and environmental assessments done. And are sent to MISTA. 5 more are scheduled for site visits with our consultant. So we're getting closer to construction. So we still have a little ways to go in approval by MISTA, but soon we'll be getting into construction on that. And then last, just won't belabor our positive audit report, but just like to make a statement on it that you know, a lot of the work, really a lot of credit goes to Courtney and her staff, Sarah, Chris, Diane, and Jordan. Which I'm sure she'll touch on a little bit in her presentation, but it's a lot of work. Sorry, it's very distracting when other people are talking.
Over there.
Just on top of everything that we have going, that Courtney's staff puts a lot of work into the organization, and it's a year-round effort, not just the week that the auditors are here. And that extends also to our directors and different departments who under Courtney's guidance really do an excellent effort at trying to stay within budget and provide the proper documentation, again, as a year-round effort. So, as the auditor mentioned, it was extremely difficult, given we have right now have a large SRF funding, the GMLG funding that we're still working through, a lot of different grants, state appropriations and federal appropriations. So we have a lot of different things that affect our budget and our finances that are outside of just the everyday average stuff that's normally looked at in the audit. So I just appreciate our entire staff of 160 or so people, but especially Courtney and her staff this year. So and that's all I have, Supervisor Brewer and board members, but happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Brian? Trustee Bo?
We get a calendar invite to the open house that you mentioned for the MDOT thing, yes.
Yeah, we
Got one? The MDOT one, yes, I can put it on my calendar.
They're still working on the date,
Okay.
finalizing the date.
When it's finalized,
Camp up over here. Yeah, they're looking at it. We'll know by 11 a.m. tomorrow that it's May 15th at between 4 and 7 in this room.
Okay.
We'll let you know soon.
Sorry if I jumped the gun on with that date.
Okay, well, we thought it was solidified until
Hope it
today.
wasn't confidential.
No, I mean, they talked about it in the meeting, the CIA meeting. Don't know.
Things change quickly,
Yeah. Thank you, Manager Reed. Any questions for Manager Reed? If not, are there any comments from any of the boards that you serve on? This is time for the board members. If you're serving on a board and you had a meeting, and if there's anything you want to share.
the Materials Management Planning Committee met for the County of Eaton, and we are still putting together our work plan to submit to Eagle for the first year, which is basically doing all the research to put together our materials management plan. And we had to push it back a month for changes.
Thank you.
So
Thank you for serving.
Mhm.
Anybody else?
The ZBA didn't this past.
Oh, they didn't
month,
meet,
so-
CBA didn't, okay, awesome. Anything else? Okay, if not, we are now down to Committee of the Whole, which is, our first item is number 21, and I'm gonna turn that over to Clerk Clark.
Yeah, I'm gonna share with you the letter from Trune, the emails from Trune. So I wasn't at the meeting, but there, my staff that drafts the minutes based on listening to the conversation texted me in the hospital and said, I don't know what to do with this issue because there was not a motion made. And so I just said, I can't deal with it now, which I didn't. And then when I was able to listen to it, I've listened to the meeting 3 times. And there was not an original motion put on the floor for the policies that require bylaw changes for boards and commission appointments. So I sent the question to MTA, like, what do we do? Does this matter? My experience with Robert's Rules of Order, which is our governing document, is it does matter, but I'm not an expert. So I sent it to MTA, to their attorneys, who in turn, response was, you need to send it to legal counsel, which I talked with Brian. I did do that. And Trune's response was, Robert's Rules of Order is your governing document, so to speak. And so it was not, it has to be readdressed because there was no motion to amend. So that's where we are. And I put on there, after review with legal counsel, this process did not follow Robert's Rules of Order, which is true, creating a procedural issue and requires action, whatever the board, I believe that it needs to be brought back. And maybe that bringing back would eliminate the amendment. I mean, if we're gonna bring it back, then that could be instead of as an amendment, but it's the pleasure of the board. But as it stands, I agree with legal, and it's my responsibility statutorily to see that our minutes are a true legal representation of what happened.
One second. I just want to say, I am the heavy on that because, in part anyway, I am the heavy on it. I remember that discussion so clearly, and I too I went back after seeing this on the agenda and watched the video because I thought, I know we passed the motion and got it supported, but what I didn't do is had a motion passed on the amendment and it had nothing to attach itself to. I should have asked for a motion on the policy first, then the amendment, because that amendment had nothing to attach to. And so we moved that first, so it was out of order. And so the minutes cannot be approved for that meeting because the Roberts Rules of Order was not applied as it should have been for that motion. Is my understanding of what the issue is.
That's my understanding. And I mean, it just happened. I mean, I listened to this over and over. There was a lot of discussion that was happening and no one caught. It's my job.
Yeah.
Sitting here to catch, is there a motion? Who made the motion? Who's the second? But I was unavailable for that meeting, so.
Yeah, and I did move the wrong part first. And so the minutes cannot be adopted, which means anything that happened during that meeting is not approved. Cannot be approved.
True.
No.
So what is the request for today? What is the action that's needed?
Well,
today,
I would like to put these assuming the board's in line with this, to put these minutes with this note that's on here and what's in the that's with the committee, the whole thing, and approve them next month, and then at our next meeting, which happens to be next month, and then to bring that
a policy back.
Right, I
And
mean,
the amendment, because those things are really not approved.
correct, the
Because they
policy
were
be
put
brought
in the
back.
wrong-
Yes. And I talked to Dennis because he was the one that opened the conversation to bring him into speed, and I talked to you.
Yes.
And I think there are some things that people would like to add to the policy, but that's not my job.
No,
That's
we
the
can always
board's
add to the
job.
policy anytime we can add to any of our policies. So the action for today, and I'm coming to you, Beth, because I see her, is to
decide what is the procedure going to be.
Just,
because we have a set of minutes that cannot be approved.
that is not true.
And you'd like to bring them back to the next meeting. Am I hearing you?
I would like to bring it back to the next meeting minus this particular
that action. All right. Trustee Bowen.
I'm looking at the opinion, the attorney's opinion. It says, under Robert's Rules of Order, a main motion can only be amended once the main motion has been moved. We did not amend the motion, we amended the policy.
You can't amend the policy. The policy was not on the floor. No one put it on the floor.
We put the amendment on the floor first.
Okay, that's what I tried.
Yeah, you're right.
Well,
I did, but there was so much going on. I wasn't expecting the amendment.
Can we slow down? I mean,
Yes, it's okay.
okay,
Calm down. It's
right.
okay.
Well, but
We're coming.
are you?
Everybody, I always say
But I'm
room
hearing
for
the same thing. I'm
everyone.
hearing the same thing.
I'm
over and over.
okay. It's okay. Everyone has an opportunity to speak.
Great. Well,
Right?
Let's
Right.
have it then.
Okay, so it's coming. Hold tight.
Wake me up.
I don't believe that's necessary. So Beth, go ahead with.
Well, because
I'm
it
coming
says
your
that
way.
the motion can only be amended once the main motion has been moved. So what we moved was that we wanted to add to the policy. We wanted to add to, before we adopted the policy.
Well, before you put it on the floor. It didn't have to be adopted. It just had to be introduced in the form of a motion, Beth.
Okay, and I understand that, it's, did we do the parentheses like this, or did we do the parentheses like this? And I understand that, but. Okay,
You good?
yep.
Okay. Treasurer Fedewa, you.
Thank
have the
you.
floor.
Well, first of all, Robert's Rules of Order is a process the board agrees to follow. It is not a law. It is not an ordinance. It's a process that we agree to follow. The board can also agree not to follow Robert's Rules of Order if it so desires. So I have a handout before you, and it's entitled Minor Mistakes in Robert's Rules Don't Invalidate an Action. And basically what it says is that if there's a process that's not following Robert's Rules of Order in a meeting, which happened because Supervisor Brewer wanted to deal with the amendment first rather than the policy, the proper thing for the board, the majority of the board at the time, was to have a point of order saying we normally would have the policy for us and then deal with an amendment. But because nobody objected, the majority of the board then acquiesced and agreed to not following Robert's Rules of Order. And so the board, the majority of the board at that meeting decided to deviate from that because nobody objected, and therefore that action was not invalidated. Okay, now this is spelled out here in this handout, and this was pretty easy to find, by the way. The author is a professional registered parliamentarian who knows this stuff. And there's other examples in here, and there's other examples throughout the internet as well. And again, so we as a board agree to follow rules, Robert's rules, until such time we don't. And when we don't, then that can happen and say, we are not going to follow Robert's rules overtly, or passively, we just don't do it and we don't object, because the point of order is at that moment in time. And if it's not brought up and the board goes along with it, which we did, then we have agreed to, as the majority of the board that was sitting there at that meeting, agreed that we were going to not follow that procedure at that time. And that does not invalidate what we did. So we don't need to review this at all. We can just keep it in place. Now, if there's an issue where we want to make amendments to it, then that's a different issue. But to say that we violated it when the board sat there, we all did, and didn't object to deviating from Robert's rules, meaning that we agreed to do that, is perfectly fine. So we should be having a discussion is, what is it you don't like about the policy? Do we want to bring the policy back and make an amendment and base it on that discussion, if you will, but not saying that the action was invalid and we have to, reverse the minutes, because that is not true.
Thank you, Treasurer. Clerk Clark.
Well, to quote you, Treasurer Fedewa, I believe just a few minutes ago, your statement was the luxury of interpretation. And I think your luxury of interpretation that this board made a conscious decision to not follow Robert's Rules of Order in that moment is a luxury of interpretation.
It's not mine. It's by a professional registered parliamentarian, Madam Clerk. It's not my interpretation.
Trustee Coscarella.
Yeah. I don't know who, I appreciate the parliamentarian's opinion on this. I would just argue, I don't know if that's best practice. I think it reflects poorly that we could just sway in and out of Robert's Rules of Order throughout a meeting. Maybe it is perfectly legal. I think we should be consistent in always applying the rules of order as practice. So I don't think this is that big of an issue to come back and correct and address properly. It wasn't intentional. It was a small misstep around the rules. So it seems that we can, and I look forward to being part of that conversation as I was absent that meeting as well. So.
Thank you, Trustee Cosgrove. Any further discussion? I'm going to make one comment. Is that I believe in doing things orderly. I do believe that we have always been respectful of Robert's Rules of Order as a board. That has been our North Star. And that was certainly the intent. I personally had no intention to go around or reshape or anything with regards to taking a luxury with the Robert's Rules of Order. It was an error. And this is a way to fix it. And I am in support of making sure that our records are accurate. And I am never afraid to say, I made a mistake, let's get it corrected. It is not that deep. Really, we are not creating a cure for cancer here.
What are we gonna do then?
So what we're going to do, Mary, what do we need?
I just what I am recommending, I mean, if I think this is the right thing to do, is to bring the minutes back with this as in here.
Yes.
So that, because it is on the recording, so that some point in the future, someone understands there was something there and now it's not there. And then
we bring
and
back
then
the policy and the
I think it was your I think it was your policy that is brought back before the board for vote.
Okay. All right, so
That's
that
just my
I
suggestion.
move that we accept this recommendation from Clerk Clark with the added language and that it be brought back to our next meeting where there will be a vote taken on it. And then we will address the policy and the amendment and have that put on the agenda and go from there. So for the May 5th meeting, we are going to, I'm asking that we place this on the agenda as presented by Clerk Clark. Is there support?
Support.
Great. Okay, is there any further dialogue? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed?
Nay.
So we have, the motion passes. We have two that said nay.
Mhm.
Okay, I just want to make sure I have that collected correctly. That motion passes. So we are done with that. Thank you. We are now on to some annual reports. Let's hear it. The accounting annual report. Thank you.
Thing is covering up, there we go. Covering up, So thank you, and I just echo what Brian said. I mean, the whole audit thing is, it is good, and I mean, I have a really great department that's all brand new since I've been here too. But it does take everyone, getting it down to the person that goes to ACO and gets the receipt, right? And doesn't just walk off without it, so. I do appreciate everyone. So I'll just go through these, stop me if you have any questions. General fund property tax revenue. We've had the 5% statutory increase for 2 years. So last year our increase was 6%. between 25 and 26, we'll see 4.4%, so 3.1% of that statutory, and the rest is new growth. So we've been fortunate to continue to see new growth that puts it at about 1% higher than what we would get if we just got the bare minimum, based on what the state sets. Other tax-related revenue is our 425 agreement that covers the General Motors property. So we've been up over $1 million. This will go up as we take on more income tax from the LG facility. And then we will also be getting 5% of the income tax off the General Motors plant, increasing to 50% over the next 10 years. So this will hopefully continue to go up.
I like these newer arrangements with this 425. We're getting more out of it
Mhm.
this time around. Thank you.
Yeah. Building permit revenue, that is very project driven. So you can see we had some very large projects in 2022 that spiked it a bit. So, but it's still over $1 million a year that we take in building permit fees, which just shows the amount of development occurring in the community. Revenue sharing stays fairly steady. That is dependent on state sales tax revenue. But is a pretty significant part of the general fund budget. This is something Jeff spoke to from Maynard tonight. So general fund interest income, we don't typically budget for this because it's not a guarantee. But it does help when the interest income comes in higher. It's been a few years now since it was negative. And that is fair value. So we don't sell these investments, but we do have to market to fair value every month. General fund operating expense. This is just the trend since 2019. So you'll see there is a big jump between 24 and what was budgeted for 25. So that's why I included the notes that we'd have the bond payment for St. Joe now. We have the anticipated payment for the bank drain, the increase to the sheriff's contract, and some unfilled positions that were not filled in 24 that we expect will have now been filled in 25. This is a monthly investment summary. Got to be fairly famous in the last 2 weeks. So this is the one through December 31st of 2024. And then I also included March. We put this together monthly. Typically I provide it to the board about quarterly. So this is just a review of where all of our funds are sitting. In the different investment pools, we use 3 main places, which is our bank account at JP Morgan Chase, Insight Investments, and then Michigan Class. Township cash balances, again, this is just a review. It's a big number, but it's not just sitting in one place that we can use for one project. It's very spread out what we can use it for. So yeah, sewer, water, things put aside for debt payments, for capital projects, for the libraries included in there. You can see the balance for the CIA. So even though it is a big lump sum of money, it's not all just available for general use. I started including the Corridor Improvement Authority slide a few years ago. So had the plan proceeded as it was originally intended, our capture would be considerably higher. But it did grow because some property became uncapped in the district. So this next fiscal year for 26, it will go up about $100,000. And 67% of that wouldn't be coming to the community without the capture district because it would be going to LCC, Eaton County, and the library. Oh, the other thing I was gonna mention too on the, sorry, we do have one other capture district that I don't typically put a slide on, but that's the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority, which is the Hilton Garden Inn property across the street. And we only have about a half a year of capture left, and then that's paid off. So instead of taking 13 years to repay the $888,000 in eligible activities across the street, it only took 7.5. So that will be done, and we will stop collecting that. Like I said, right around half of next year. Summer should pay it off for the most part. Water, sewer, you can see, I mean, demand because, you know, a lot of energy efficient appliances, those sorts of things. You know, the water consumption dropped considerably even before COVID. It is now sort of inching back up, but you can see that we can't rely on That's why rates are hard, right? Because you can't assume a growth factor. We're barely back to what we were doing in 2016. A lot of that is also GM dependent. When they're off of production, it makes a very large difference in our revenue. Now, this does not reflect Altium, which should have a pretty significant increase once they're ramped up to production. But I always find that interesting how much it fell between 2016 and 2019. Top 5 users are really the same right now. Altium hasn't or LG hasn't broken into the top 5 yet, but General Motors, BWL, the state of Michigan, Norplast, and Cintas are usually our top 5. I imagine next year we'll see LG on the list. Expenditures on our major projects. So the water resource recovery facility, we're up to 68.3 million that we've spent. We did make our first principal payment. So, we talk about having a lot of cash on hand, but that was $4 million in bond payment that was out the door of the sewer fund for year 1 of that principal payment. So it comes, but it also goes. We have money on the LG project, which we're almost done. We had 8.6 million that was given to us from, at the time, Altium. We've spent 8.1, so we're almost wrapped up with that money. And then of the LEAP 33 million, we've spent 30.4. So we're getting very close. We just have some final payments on the Grand River construction for the EQ basin and the booster station. And then we'll be wrapped up with LEAP. So getting the LG projects off the finish will be huge for all of us, Rick, certainly, and Jake included. Invoicing, so just some general activities. So while we have all the projects and all the interesting things, we also just have our daily or monthly tasks. Over 10,000 active utility accounts. We do have a good percentage paid by ACH and a good percentage that get their bill by email, which is very helpful in postage costs. And then we generate over 12,000 tax bills twice a year. Total payments made to the township was $155 million. So that was how much money the 5 of us processed through the office. It's always pretty shocking to see that number. And you can see 44% still come by check. 0.5, so less than 1% of that amount comes by cash. It's still quite a bit of cash though. A lot of EFT and online payments, fortunately. Transaction type, so it's 98,000 transactions. So checks, cash, credit, online, that's everything that processes through the office. We've been really fortunate to keep our collection rates. So the amount we actually collected of 2024 taxes was 98.4%, which is right on where it was last year and the year before. We received the money that we don't collect for real property back from the county. So our collection rate's closer to 100% in reality, but the amount we actually brought in. So we have not seen a lot of any more delinquency. And then the value of water and sewer bills outstanding for over 60 days, over $70 is $19,000. So I mean, really in the grand scheme of it, that's not very much. A lot of people working payment plans. So we've been very fortunate that we haven't seen an increase in delinquencies. And that's a monthly bill of $1 million now between water and sewer. ARPA money, just kind of a review of what we spent the ARPA money on. So I think that we did a really good job of spending it through different capital projects, especially in public safety. I was meeting with the chiefs about their equipment needs, and so many of them were taken care of between the state appropriation for the aerial and the ARPA grants. Really, we got very much ahead with ambulances and trucks. And then we had some administration building improvements, parks projects. So I think we did a good job of spreading it around to one-time projects, as opposed to adding something to the budget that then we have to continue to pay for, which I think would have been an easy trap to fall into. So 3.5 million, the only thing that actually has not gone out the door money-wise is the ambulance that actually I believe should be here this week or next week.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, and then we're done.
Forever.
Yeah, we're done with that. Just some general major duties of our office. Like I said, reconciling the daily cash receipts, for $155 million. That's, probably our major responsibility besides paying out payroll, which is definitely the most stressful part of the job. About $12 million in payroll we put out and 9,400 invoices. all through a paperless process, and we have improved that process over the past 6 months. Made it even. We're able to make it a little bit better with the cloud. And then our annual reporting requirements, which we're working through right now. A lot of these have to be done once the audit is complete, so we're working through. Actually, I can take the CVTRS annual report off because they don't make us do that anymore finally, after like 15 years of fun. But yeah, so we do have a lot of reporting that we have to keep up on, that various staff members are responsible for. I think that's it.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Courtney? Treasurer Fedor?
Yeah, Courtney, out of all these reportings, which is the most labor intensive?
The F-65.
You didn't even
That's
hesitate.
an utter nightmare and should be eliminated.
I didn't get the question out
Did you
my
grab-
mouth, they answered it.
I don't need to think about that one. Yeah, I'm like, who can I teach to do that? So, I'm supposed to be helping, the next generation of people, so I will be training someone on that here soon.
Who's the short straw, you mean?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Thank you so much, Courtney. We love these annual reports and many thanks to your team. The good work that they're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is the planning department. Planning and economic development. Economic development.
All right, I'll cut this way back because I know everybody wants to go home.
But we want
So-
to hear what you have to say, Peter.
I want to go home more than listen to me.
You got 5 minutes, go.
I was just told that, already, so I think that is kind of when people hear I'm going to present, I think that is kind of the mindset. Just hurry up and get done. So. Okay. Last April, I was appointed as the interim director of the planning department, and in July I took over full-time. So I added economic development as in red, is to make the specific point that it's a conscious decision to move away from just kind of planning department as usual and focus and broaden the focus. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. And just to preface this, the planning department doesn't have the kind of quantifiable reporting that like the numbers that we have. So mine's a little more vague. Maybe a little philosophy, and I could stretch it and we could probably stay till 9:15, really get in deep on it. So we posed for this photograph just for this report. So this is the planning department team. We have myself. I've been at the township just a little over 2 years, but just more recently took over the planning department as well. So we have Dave Walagora has been here almost 10 years. Hope Wojak on the far right, depending on where you are in the room. Started in August. And Sarah Anderton has just started at the new year. So she's with us 24 hours a week. She's our planning assistant, department and assistant. So a lot has changed in the last couple of years in the planning department specifically. So Gary Bozick, Mark Graham, they were, definitely people had been here a long time, a lot of tenure. So when they left, and more recently when Gary left last, I think early summer, it really kind of left the department and I'm like, where do we go from here kind of thing. So welcome change, in some cases, welcome changes, but it's been hard to kind of regroup and move forward. So, and with no disrespect, I don't mean welcome changes like people leaving, but we were due for a refresh in some ways. So we had a lot of personnel changes. One of the big things, I am a stickler for getting out of the paper business. So we moved to all electronic submittals and paper and digital files. And part of that was cleaning the office space. I don't know if you've ever been to the planning department, but I now welcome you in the room. 2 months ago, maybe not as much. But we have really gone to great lengths to go through the old stuff, shed some of it, the things that we legally can shed, keep and organize the rest of it, and really just to kind of have a good start with us and have our resources organized. We also updated our applications. They hadn't been updated before email. There was no place for email on the applications the department was using up until this last year. So that's been helpful. And we continue to have desire to continue on with that because I think applications are one of the biggest things that we use in terms of getting good information for people as it relates to projects. So we also migrated to BSNA Cloud. That has just been a challenge. We do review pretty much every building permit that comes through the township comes to my desk or my email inbox. So we review building permits from zoning, not trades permits, but the other, construction permits. So department philosophy, I will not fixate on this very long, but my personal philosophy, I think is work philosophy that's developed over the years is I want the planning department to be a one-stop shop. We solve problems. We don't send people to other departments to find answers. We do our best to try to answer those as much as possible in-house. We try not to pass problems along. Proactively amend the zoning ordinance and fix what doesn't work. There's too many, I've worked in places and just have worked with people that I think feel like this doesn't work. Well, then we need to deal with it, get it in front of a group like this, share what doesn't work and draft new language. That being said, I mean, we don't throw the whole zoning ordinance out. We're gonna work incrementally to address the most important things over the next couple of years to really get our ordinance into a shape that I think we're all can be proud of because zoning impacts everyone unequivocally. So get out to visit sites. I hate to be kind of upended by like a commissioner or someone said, well, I was on the site and what's that barrel over there? So it's a different perspective when you get out to these development sites. And I think it's important for our staff to put feet on. And I encourage members of boards and commissions to do the same. Provide a positive experience for applicants. There are going to be no's and people run into that throughout the process, but I still want the experience to be informed and prepared. So the people that we work with, I mean, we are shepherds really ultimately, and working with applicants, working with people, helping them prepare, like the special land use folks, they were here tonight, what to expect, how to operate, where to be, not what to say, but what to be prepared for and what kind of things you might be asking about, that kind of thing. So we do that both in the application process, but also in kind of the personal touch before meetings like this. Anticipate issues, don't wait for neighbors or commissioners to raise them. We have the experience with other projects to know what kind of things come up. So to proactively address those at the beginning of the process rather than wait till the meeting night, which can happen. Then also, I mean, just in general, people don't know what to do. Just overall, in government, we represent a lot of different things to a lot of different people, but people do not know what to do in general. Just help them. But assume that, don't shame them, just help them. So really fast, overall, I just wanted to kind of understand what our general statutory responsibilities are. Like I said, we are development shepherds, and I really think of it that way. It's a good kind of mindset to have. We process and shepherd and prepare notices. We do everything. Special land use permits, rezoning, site plan review, zoning code amendments, master planning. We review all development projects that come through the township. That entails writing staff memos, doing research, finding historical, other projects that are related to that, looking at past policies. We kind of run the development review team. So we circulate plans to engineering, utilities, the Eaton County Drain Commission, the road department. We are responsible for getting all those comments and kind of bringing them back to you so that everything's in a nice package when you see it. But we also enforce the zoning ordinance, and that's also a lot of work. So it runs hand in hand with what the building and code department is doing with code enforcement. We have kind of less overall responsibilities for that. We look at things like parking in the front yard or on the grass, boats and RVs and driveways, which we're going to talk about at some point in the future, home occupations, signs. So we have a good chunk of it, not as much as kind of the just, hey, there's trash over there kind of thing, but we do have a significant role in code enforcement in general as it relates to the zoning ordinance. Review building permits for compliance. I talked about that earlier. We see every permit pretty much. And then we also review sign permits. So any sign that goes up is coming through my office as well. We provide township board staff support to a lot of boards and commissions here. Township Board, Planning Commission, Zoning Board of Appeals. They're also the Sign Board of Appeals. Economic Development Corporation, which is also the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority. Now we've talked a lot tonight about the Corridor Improvement Authority. So along with that, as you know, goes a lot of administrative work. preparing meeting packets, but also the communication engagement, having that personal touch with the members, keeping up with them, making sure that they know about not just the projects and the meetings are in front of them, but other stuff that's going on at the township. I always take time in every meeting to kind of report on, like Brian's report tonight, everything that's going on in the community, because they want to be involved. And I personally want to make it a meaningful experience for these folks that take time out of their personal lives, but sometimes you question why, but you want to make it worthwhile for them and really give them something to chew on. And then also we do a lot of policy research and guidance. So stuff like the short-term rentals or things like that. We look at, always look at other communities, assemble information, develop policy options. I always like to kind of provide a framework to whatever group we're working with so that you understand and can make informed decisions about like, take any given issue. There are probably 6 different ways to resolve it, but what way works best for this community based on all kinds of factors here. Economic development, this is a new, it's really myself, Brian, the manager's office. I, over time, would like the planning team to get more engaged with economic development in general, but it's also, I have always thought about economic development, and we don't have time to get into it tonight. But in general, it's just not the same as it was in the 80s and 90s and 2000s. It's not shopping center conventions, and it's just different. There are site selectors, you have demographics, and you either pop to a company or you don't. And it's not necessarily a matter of cajoling someone to come to Delta because it's just so great. There's so many other factors now. But it's a natural fit. Merging these two worlds, planning and economic development, it makes sense. Planning is often the front door for just about anything. Random questions to a company coming in that wants to expand or build a whole new development with hundreds of residential units. That is economic development. Our approach to those projects and being organized and getting them through the process, that's economic development. It's not necessarily grants and dollars and that kind of thing, but you get it. Establishing economic development mindset in the planning team. We're less civil servant, more community liaison, and that's the approach on how our team really needs to handle things. But also a lot of those things that I've been working on and over time we'll continue to do better at is developing contacts with local businesses and outreach on policies. We are trying to build out this business database. We talked earlier a little bit about the MDOT project that's coming up. When we talk more about that, I can talk to you about collaboration with engineering department and GIS, and able to have a whole GIS system with all the businesses along West Saginaw corridor that we can grab, and then ultimately have that as a place where we can store contact information so that they're available to everybody in the township. We also do a lot of reporting out and different development projects and kind of maintain that, like try to be the go-to people or person in my case for what's going on in the township at any given time in terms of projects. So now the metrics, these are not as exciting and they're not necessarily based on, they're kind of just based on market factors. It's not, we haven't gone out and kind of roused enough rezoning applications. They come to us. So there's been a general trend. This last year we had a lot more site plans, kind of unprecedented for the department to have that many projects. So it has been tough, and it has been tough for not just planning. I think the majority of probably the hard work comes from the engineering utilities department, but we're, like I said, we're the shepherds, we're kind of managing these processes, but it takes everybody to really dig in on the details of the plans. And then this is just a table that shows overall. You see the giant column on the far right that represents the total cases we had. So it's been a significant growth. I expect that to continue to happen. We have a lot of projects kind of on the precipice of happening there. So I think you'll see these numbers grow and the general trend continue. Examples of projects, you've seen all these, but we put a lot of time into things like tailgaters. Horrocks has been a saga, really, getting the bathroom building and just in general, working on that site. Bass Pro Shops, McLaren, this is just last year. Jiffy Lube, Ionetics expansion. They had 1 nuclear reactor in the building. They will have 2 soon. The Best Buy construction, D&K, these big industrial expansions, D&K truck. These not just projects, they represent significant reinvestments and recommitments to Delta Township. So Midwest Press, Rivers Edge Church, and there's more coming. That's it. So I'll try to go as fast as possible.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for all that you're doing. You're kind of the voice of businesses for us, and we appreciate that. Are there any questions or comments for Peter?
Not a question, just I appreciate your philosophy of being proactive and the energy that you bring to this. I really love to see it. I think it really informs us and energizes us too. So thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? We love it that you help people. You don't turn them away or move them or shift them somewhere else. So keep doing what you're doing. It's great.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Peter. We are now on public comments. Is there anyone that would like to make public comment? Thank you. Come on up here, Keith.
Bless your heart, you sat here the whole time.
Keith Wright, I live in Delta, address 1519 Marcy Avenue. And I just wanted to take a moment and thank you all for the consideration you took in the diligence in making sure that the CIA board is run properly and seated properly, as cumbersome as that can be at times, I'm sure. But the last thing I want as a township resident is something to get challenged and cost additional funds to figure out if we were legal and what we were doing or not. From that perspective, it's interesting, the question of business interest. I read that completely different as filling out the application as I had business interests in the success of the business in that location, the success of the property as the office manager and entrusted with the success of the business. So it means something completely different to me than what it meant to Treasurer Fedowa. So I just found that as an interesting perspective as well. And then one step further, it's interesting as a credit union and being a nonprofit, by being a shareholder, I'm actually owner of the credit union as well. So that adds to the quandary of what is ownership. And then the example that was given by Treasurer Fedowa is the guy that's internet business and never there. But I would question also the alternative of a business that owns property in the township, a gentleman, and then is never in the township and never is actively engaged in the community. So the multiple perspectives, and I think Supervisor Brewer and Trustee Lyman really zoned in on that during the interviews. My experience at least of the purpose of why I want to be invested and how I'm involved in the community. And I've been on the chamber board at Grand Ledge Chamber, which encompasses a large portion of Delta Township since 2018. So super involved, excited to see the growth. And it's interesting, since my application, driving down Saginaw and coming down with the different thoughts, the possibilities of how we could improve the corridor too. So with that, I think I'm out of my 3 minutes and pushing on to the 9:15 here, but with that, I'll sit down. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments. See, nothing other than staff here. I think that concludes public comments. And is there anything else that's needed to be discussed before the board? Treasurer Fedowa?
Yeah, thank you. Before we leave, I just, in reference to the MDOT open house, I sat on the CIA meeting, last one, and I thought it would benefit this board, at least I think it is, to have the CIA actually make a presentation before this board. We've never had one yet. And there's a lot of things going on there, not just with the MDOT and the boulevard, but there's some visioning that's transpired. I think it would benefit this board to hear what that is. We have just not heard any of that, and they've been in existence now for nearly 2 years, maybe a little bit more now. So they've had time, to develop that, and things are gonna start rolling. And I think this board should be aware of, what they've been doing. And, we can also have some input with them at their presentation. So I would like to suggest that we actually request a presentation from the CIA at a future committee of the whole in the future.
I think that's a good idea. And I also want to share with everyone that their meetings are captured. And so if you're not able to attend one, please watch it. Because while there hasn't been a whole lot of movement, now they're gonna start doing a little bit more. So I always think it's a good idea to hear from our boards and commissions. We'll turn that over to Manager Reed to add them in the roster somewhere along the way. But I also urge you to watch the meetings. Bring yourself up to date. This is our corridor improvement authority. So be as engaged as your schedule will allow you to. And I thank you. Is there anything else before the board? If not, we are adjourned. Take snacks. There's some snacks back there for you.